A game inspired by Greek mythology, where you play as the greatest warrior among mortal men. If you had any interest in gaming back then, it is very likely you have played, or at least heard about this game. God of War is special to me. I have played it many times and even knew it all from memory. Since then a lot of time has passed, but I still have fond memories of my time playing through it, and if I were to score it purely based on these memories, it would be an 8 or a 9 out of 10. But that is not what I will be doing today. Today, I will be playing through the game again from start to finish. I will also mention any bugs as I come across them, but the gaming experience will be that of a casual player simply having a fun time. With all that being said, welcome! In this video I will be evaluating the game I spent countless hours and far too many playthroughs with, God of War.
The gods of Olympus have abandoned me. Now there is no hope.
And Kratos cast himself from the highest mountain in all of Greece. After 10 years of suffering, 10 years of endless nightmares, it would finally come to an end. Death would be his escape from madness.
God of War opens up with the end of Kratos' journey. We see him as a broken man with no desire left to continue living. He was driven to this point by his nightmares, but as of this moment we do not know what those nightmares are, nor why it took him this long before he finally gave up. When Kratos said,
"Now there is no hope,"
you could hear the pain and sorrow in his voice.
And Kratos cast him. But it had not always been this way. Kratos had once been a champion of the gods.
Foul beast! I will send you back to the depths of Hades!
As players, we start the game from this moment. Kratos is staring down some zombie-like monsters wielding rusty swords. Let's say they are drowned sailors whose bodies were reanimated and now roam the area, with which now begin our first combat encounter. Press square for a quick attack, triangle for a heavy attack, and circle for a grab. You can begin a combo with either a heavy or a quick attack, and then follow up with whichever button you desire. Using heavy attack at any point after the second hit in a combo will end your combo chain by unleashing a powerful ground slam. You can also hold down triangle to launch an enemy into the air, and if you continue holding the button down, Kratos himself will jump up in slow motion, allowing you to get in some air attacks as well. Hitting an enemy mid-air prolongs both Kratos' and their duration of flight. Alternatively, you could launch an enemy and keep attacking enemies on the ground, or manually jump after the launched enemy, or press circle in their general direction either from the floor or in the air to perform a grab attack that they cannot defend against. As the game progresses, various enemies will gain various defenses against some attacks, but for now you can do pretty much whatever you want. The combat system is pretty simple, but it feels great to engage with. After defeating the initial few enemies, more drowned sailors climb aboard from the lower deck by breaking the chains that were holding down the hatch. But as it turns out, them doing this also opened up a new path for us. However, we will need to reopen the hatch and we cannot do that while the drowned are still attacking us. So we need to either defeat them or push them far enough away so that we can open it. Once opened, the drowned can also jump down after Kratos on occasion. Also, as a little fun fact, you can actually prevent the drowned from breaking the hatch open if you stand on it. But as soon as you step off, the same gets in place. You cannot progress the game if the drowned never break the chains, but it is cool that the developers thought of including this delay. Anyway, now that we got on the lower deck, we are greeted by a chest with a green glow. Approach the chest and a prompt appears on the screen urging us to press and hold R2 to open chests. So when we do just that, green orbs fly out and then get absorbed by Kratos, restoring his health. You can also keep leaving and then returning to the chest, and the helpful tip will keep reappearing. Continuing on, there is some rubble in the way, with surprisingly high durability, that we have to destroy in order to move on. What is good about this is that when attacking an object that can be destroyed, the screen will shake with each hit, letting us know that we are on the right track, but it takes some time to get the desired result. As we continue down the hallway, we get another hint about blocking. You may use the block button once you are jumped by a Hydra, the first boss of the game, or you can just walk backwards and avoid the sudden attack altogether. The Hydra boss fight is very basic, as it is meant to serve as your introduction into fighting advanced enemies. All of the Hydra's attacks can be blocked or avoided, though blocking them is far easier. Here, however, we also come across the first thing that I dislike. When you perform a perfect block, Kratos performs a deflection animation in slow motion. This is all well and good, but if you are fighting an enemy that strikes all the time, you will nearly always use perfect block even if you don't mean to, meaning half of this battle happens in slow motion, because you are constantly perfect blocking all of the Hydra's attacks. In the rest of the game this isn't an issue, so just getting through this one fight is very much acceptable, albeit slightly annoying. But back to the fight itself. Once we reduce the Hydra's health by about 1/3, it becomes stunned and a circle button appears above its head. Pressing this button triggers a cinematic mode where you have to press buttons as they appear on screen in order to defeat the enemy in question. In this specific case, all the prompts will always be a triangle, but in the latter game they will always be random. Once the cinematic is successfully completed, the Hydra retreats. A cool fact for you, if you play on a lower difficulty or with bonus play, unlocked after beating the game, you can just keep on hitting the stunned Hydra until its health bar is completely drained, which will also cause it to retreat. But on higher difficulties you don't have enough time to do this before it recovers. Anyway, once the Hydra is gone, we can proceed through some balancing beams. There is a pool of water underneath them, so if we fall, we can try again. You can also just jump on through them with minimal balancing, but if you succeed like me, then you're better off not taking unnecessary risks. Having made our way through the beams, we now step onto a narrow path, at the end of which is a panicked man. However, it seems the Hydra isn't the main reason for his fear. Upon seeing Kratos, he closes himself in a prison of sorts to seal himself inside and prevent Kratos from getting too close, explaining he knew what Kratos had done and would rather die than be saved by him. This could have more meanings depending on the context, which, as of right now, we don't have. We can only imagine what has this man so afeared of his potential savior. What could drive a man to embrace death rather than a chance at living? This is also the first time we learned that Kratos is a Spartan, so that's neat. But since there is nothing more to be done, we go on encountering a chest with red or blood orbs that can be used to strengthen Kratos' weapons, the Blades of Chaos. We can also invest in them without fully matching the required amount, but the weapons themselves will become more powerful only once the full required amount of blood orbs has been sacrificed. For now though, we just move on, finding a second rubble blockade and also a hint for evading. What the hint doesn't tell you is that right after evading, Kratos' attacks are all faster until said combo is finished. For the current predicament it doesn't make a difference, still it is very likely you will figure this out while slashing at the rubble, so again a good use of an obstacle where you are not under attack. Breaking the rubble leads to a different ship's upper deck, where sailors are being massacred by harpies. These harpies are fairly easy to fight, but there are a lot of them, and while they are not especially aggressive, it can be challenging beating them while keeping an eye on the other harpies to make sure they don't attack you. We can grab them from ground level to outright kill them, or grab them from the air 3 times for the same result. It is important to mention that on the vast majority of enemies, killing them outright with a single circle button does not reward any blood orbs. You are therefore incentivized to engage in a more proper combat, unless you don't mind missing out on upgrade material. In this harpy encounter, we can also kill the sailors to restore a bit of our health, and it can be pretty difficult to avoid hitting them. But there are no negative consequences to striking or killing them, so you can approach this situation as you will. After defeating enough of the harpies, the rest will fly away, and if any sailors were still alive, they will now run through the corridor that was previously blocked off by the rubble you destroyed. And only then started your harpy combat, making you wonder why they didn't run away sooner. Now is the perfect time to open up the 2 locked doors at the right end of the ship to reveal some more blood orbs. Afterwards, we move back to the middle of the ship and out pops the Hydra, fully revitalized and deadlier than before. It gained 2 attacks that cannot be blocked, one of which is its grab attack that can be countered by rapidly pressing circle, and upon success, Kratos deals massive damage to the Hydra. It is entirely possible to defeat it just by countering its grab move over and over. It is not very efficient, but you can do it if you want to. During the battle, the Hydra can be slightly staggered after each attack, yielding you some green orbs. However, occasionally it will attack twice in a row, with no recovery window in between. Defeat the Hydra again and move on through the same hole it punched through the ship's deck. After a short swim, we climb up by grabbing onto some rigging and find ourselves surrounded by more drowned sailors, as well as seeing the Hydra off in the distance attacking normal sailors. While it is true that the beast doesn't attack just us, it still took it a while before it reappeared after the first encounter. However, now it is right there immediately after it was just defeated. This is the first time we start considering that the Hydra might not be a singular entity. Defeat the Drowned, or don't, and make your way across another balancing beam. Here I learned that while Kratos can instinctively grab onto an edge of a beam if he slips off, he does not do that if you just barely miss the beam from a jump. He even makes the sound effect he does when he tries to grab on, but he automatically lets go instantly. This is likely a programming oversight. Anyway, make your way through, grab a chest along the way if you want to, and board the third ship where we encounter another cutscene.
It's you! The visions, they were real! The gods came to me, told me their champion would come and rescue us from the Hydra. But you're too late! We're pinned down! These creatures, they came from nowhere. The ships are all destroyed. All hope is lost, Spartan. Even for you.
If you were paying attention, you might have noticed that the sailor who was shot in the head was not afraid of Kratos. Instead, he seemed to have a ray of hope returned upon seeing him approach. He still thought Kratos came too late, but he was glad he showed up at all. This is a very different interaction than with the previous sailor who locked himself away in fear. Also, here you can see I triggered the hint while the screen was fading to black. It didn't break the game script, but it is interesting that you are able to do this. Some hints pause the game while others don't. They most often do if you would be in danger if you stood still and the enemies could still attack you, like the archers we must now overcome. So, approach a golden light and you can save your game, a power given to you by the grace of Zeus. On the surface this doesn't sound too significant, but when you find out that the Sisters of Fate listen to what Zeus says in God of War 2, it is possible he tells them to return you in time before you died so you can try again. But now to deal with the archers. We can see some sailors hiding behind covers and the archers cannot strike them there. This should also mean the same applies to us, and it does. We can see a small box to the side that we can move around slowly or give it a powerful kick to move it a long distance all at once. Since the archers are too high for Kratos' attacks to reach them, we need this box. But the box isn't indestructible and the archers are very accurate. So how do we deal with this? It is actually very straightforward. If you observe the archers for a while, you will notice they shoot where you are going to be, not where you currently are. This means you can move to the left or right, or even jump just before they shoot their arrows, and you will have an easy time dealing with them. It also happens that they quite often misfire and no projectiles are shot. This happens randomly, but often. Deliver the box to the rigging right next to the archers, climb up and either defeat the archers or just move on. Throughout this playthrough you will notice that you are not forced to defeat enemies nearly as often as you would think, based on how many of them are thrown your way. You can often just walk past them. Upon reaching the other end of the path, we can hear a woman screaming for help while mentioning that we must find the key. Given her urgency, it seems we are already late, but nevertheless we move on and maybe we'll look for said key along the way. We ignore a ladder and enter a rigging climbing section, where enemies are everywhere and can easily swarm us if we try to avoid them. It is still possible to recover from such a situation, but it will cost us some health. Once we reach the top of the rigging, we take a rope slide that is for some reason tied to a ship far away, stranded on a cliff, and once we land there, we break through 3 wooden plank doors. One reveals more blood orbs, the second one introduces us to Gorgon eyes, collect 6 of them for a permanent increase to maximum health, and the third is the continuation for our journey. We go inside the narrow hallway and notice a blue light pouring like a waterfall with a bolt symbol spinning in the middle. Approach and Poseidon himself greets you.
Lord Poseidon.
Kratos, before you reach Athens, there is a task you must complete. This beast, this Hydra, it has terrorized my seas for far too long. Your skills are admirable, but you will need assistance. You will need the power of the gods. Take this weapon, Kratos. Take this power and use it to defeat your enemies. Go with the gods, Kratos. Go forth in the name of Olympus.
Poseidon just gave us the power to channel primordial storms of the sea through our body. This power is magic and so uses some of the magic gauge to trigger. This power can also be upgraded much like the blades, and is in fact the strongest attack Kratos can wield. It is a bit strange we gain it so early in the game, but perhaps the devs simply didn't have a better spot to introduce it. Now with Poseidon's blessing, we can move forward, ignoring all the enemies that spawn for us to test our new power on, and coming up on our second save point and chests to regenerate our health and magic. Once again we climb some rigging to discover the full might of the Hydra.
Get them away from the ship!
Why won't they die?
It's the giant one! He keeps healing the others!
No, God! We'll never get out of here! Doomed! We're doomed! We're off! Silent, save me.
During this cutscene, one sailor shouts that the giant Hydra keeps healing the other Hydra heads. However, when the giant Hydra actually makes an appearance, the sailors all seem to be shocked at the sight of it, including Kratos himself. So how exactly did the sailors figure out the giant one is a healer? They have absolutely no chance of fighting off a Hydra head, and all the ships are constantly under attack. In other words, utter chaos. So it is quite unlikely they would just so happen to see the giant head heal up the smaller ones. But questions will have to wait, because now we have a triple Hydra battle on our hands. The smaller heads are to the left and right side of the central mast that also has some rigging. However, if you try climbing it while the smaller Hydra are still active, they will knock you down. This deals no damage to you, but it does prevent you from engaging in battle with the main head. So let's take care of them. The two Hydras are similar in function to the second Hydra fight, but both of them lost the unblockable attacks. Defeat one of the heads, climb the nearby boxes and jump onto a loading crane, causing its hook to pierce through the monster, immobilizing it. Do the same to the second head and climb up the rigging, finally reaching the main head. It has 3 attacks, all of which are bite strikes from 3 possible directions. The mast you stand on cannot be destroyed, but is quite claustrophobic when fighting a giant. Wait for the Hydra to bite down, strike it a few times and repeat the process until it is stunned. Then grab it with the circle button spinning on its head, and repeat 2 more times to destroy the top part of the mast's supporting pillar. Once that is done, stun the Hydra one final time and impale it on the broken support pillar. It is a good attention to detail that even though the Hydra was pierced through, it was still powerful enough to lift Kratos into the air multiple times before finally perishing. Now that the beast is dead, the ship captain can be heard shouting for help from inside its throat. So we wore ourselves inside the Hydra to look for him.
Thank you! Thank the gods you came back for me!
I didn't come back for you.
This scene seems curious to me. Kratos at first does try to rescue the captain, Ski, before grabbing onto the captain's arm and pulling him up as well. However, once the captain thanks the gods Kratos came to rescue him, that's when Kratos decides to chop him down, taking his Ski in the process. It's almost as if the mention of gods infuriated Kratos. Anyway, moving on, a rigging now spawned on the ship's right loading hook that we can use to reach a rope glide back to the previous ship. Why were these ships tied together over such massive distances? Okay, enough about ropes, and let's backtrack a little bit by going forward. After riding the rope, we are back at the archers' firing zone area from before, but this time the archers are much easier to take care of, even when accompanied by more drowned. Again, we can either defeat them all or ignore them and use the box from our previous visit to progress further. Also, the sailors that were kept alive before are still alive now and still in the same positions. This means they were covering behind the boxes for about 10 minutes straight while they were not under attack. Gotta admire their dedication. So, after climbing up the ship, we can now open the captain's cabin doors and go on a rescue mission. However, none of the screams from before can be heard anymore.
Slaughtered like animals, the victims lay before him, a reminder of his own past, a past he could never escape. His only solace was the sea, endlessly sailing from one harbor to the next in service to the gods of Olympus. All his hopes rested with them. For no matter how much wine he consumed or how many women he took to his bed, nothing on earth could rid him of the horrors that plagued his mind.
Athena! 10 years, Athena. I have faithfully served the gods for 10 years. When will you relieve me of these nightmares?
We request one final task of you, Kratos. Your greatest challenge awaits in Athens, where even now my brother Ares lays siege as we speak. Athens is on the verge of destruction. It is the will of Ares my great city fall. Zeus has forbidden the gods from waging war on each other. That is why it must be you, Kratos. Only a mortal trained by a god has a chance at defeating Ares.
And if I am able to do this, to kill a god, then the visions, they will end?
Complete this final task, and the past that consumes you will be forgiven. Have faith, Kratos. The gods do not forget those who come to their aid.
Leaving the rotting carcass of the Hydra behind, Kratos set sail once more. His greatest challenge and freedom from his growing madness lay before him in the ancient city of Athens.
During the cutscene, we saw Kratos shouting for Athena to appear, as opposed to showing reference, similar to how he greeted the apparition of Poseidon in the Aegean. Also, I have to highlight the length of loading times, because they basically don't even exist. You may have some game freeze loadings in certain sections if you are especially fast, but if you play casually, at most you will experience only about 2 of them. Upon arriving in Athens and regaining control over Kratos, we can help him with his procreational activities by pressing the correct buttons at the right time as he rocks the world of the 2 girls by regaling them with stories of his venture's past. Also, you will notice throughout God of War how NPCs may appear different in cutscenes than they do in the game world. For example, these 2 women were one blonde, the other brunette in the cutscene, but both are brunettes in the game world. If you impress the women with your stories enough, they will be so happy they will accidentally knock over a vase from the side of the bed. It's a good thing ancient Greeks discovered a way to respawn ornamental decorations. The first time Kratos speaks of his adventures, he gains a large amount of blood orbs, but any subsequent success in a single playthrough will yield but a tiny amount, so while it is possible to grind enough blood orbs to last you the rest of the game, it is a terrible way to spend your time. Moving on, we make our way through the lower deck until climbing out via a ladder and then docking in harbor. We can chat up Athena, but she just repeats what she said in the cutscene. So we go to the harbor itself, where a new enemy type appears, armored zombies. They are far more durable and cannot be grabbed without damaging them first. Once you do enough damage, they will become temporarily stunned, and that is our opportunity for a grab. If we were not to make use of this opportunity, that specific enemy will no longer be grabbable and must simply be defeated in combat. They can still be launched into the air and then grabbed as normal. They are not overly active in attacking, but their attacks cannot be interrupted once they started. Defeat those and a second group later down the road. During this battle, you can see that if you are low on health, enemies will start randomly dropping health orbs upon defeat. Next we take a side dip into the waters to find an optional area to find a phoenix feather before returning the way we came. This time we take an elevator up and see two Athenian soldiers standing at the end of the bridge.
Run! Run! The beasts have taken Athens! Look out! No! No! Stay away from me!
In the cutscene, Kratos had enough time to save the second soldier but chose not to. Anyway, now we fight Asterioses, but they are fairly simple to defeat. Launch them into the air, jump after them, grab them 3 times in a row and they are defeated. On the other hand, while the previous armored zombies could defend themselves from attacks, these minotaurs can also counterattack. We can weaken them to trigger the circle button to appear and QTE them to gain health orbs from their defeat. However, killing them this way does not deal any blood orbs. I could have sworn it did, but apparently not. We defeat all minotaurs, but the barrier behind us on the previous elevator did not lift, so we must continue forwards. We use the second elevator, step forward and see 2 soldiers trying to open a busted gate to allow reinforcements to arrive. Though, for some reason, neither their voices nor the sound effects triggered, but this was most likely an issue of the emulation, as on PS2 everything works properly. Also, the enemies that killed them used literally the exact same animation cycle, only delayed by about half a second between the second and the first enemy. During the cutscene we could see the camera shaking, and after the cutscene it is revealed that a Cyclops was climbing up a wall and is now ready to attack us. None of his attacks can be blocked, but all of them are slow enough to easily dodge them. Upon his defeat, 2 more Cyclopes arrive, and upon their defeat, the path is finally clear. But before that, we now have enough blood orbs to upgrade the Blades of Chaos. The upgraded blades grant us access to a new launching attack, performed by L1 plus X, and the same button combination while in air performs a short combo. We also gain access to a shoulder bash by pressing R1, which can be useful for knocking enemies out of an arena while they are midair. However, on the ground level enemies, the attack's hitbox is very selective about when it wants to work. Lastly, the blades now deal a little more damage with all attacks, and the Rage of Gods buff was unlocked. Using this ability grants Kratos temporary superpower, including greater resistance to damage, immunity to stagger from enemy attacks, and a new set of combos. Special combos performed via pressing the shoulder buttons remain the same. This power-up is very potent but takes an extremely long time to recharge, so use it sparingly. Now back to Kratos' journey. Go through the narrow corridor that opened up after the defeat of Cyclopes, and smash the wooden crates supporting the steel ones to cause them to drop a level so that we can reach them. Scour the area for hidden chests and go find what lies beyond the newly rebuilt corridor.
Aphrodite.
Kratos, the gods are pleased with your progress, but your current skills will not be enough to defeat the minions of Ares. I offer you the power to freeze your enemies where they stand, but you must earn such a gift. Medusa, the queen of the Gorgons. Bring me her head, Kratos, and I will give you the ability to wield its power.
You can see how Aphrodite's mouth still moves long after she stops speaking, but you can also see how confident Kratos is that he will kill Medusa. By the way, he casually adjusts his blade in his hand. Medusa is nimble and cannot be attacked on ground for long, as she will retaliate with quick attacks. Her signature move is, of course, her gaze that turns men to stone. This gaze will petrify you quickly if you just run or walk, but if you dodge roll, the gaze has no effect on you. While you are not under the effects of the gaze, your build-up petrification meter will deplete, allowing you to roll all over the place while Medusa sees you and still remain unbound. You can also use slam attacks to stop Medusa's gaze early. Weaken Medusa, press circle on her, ask her to relinquish her head, and she will oblige after some convincing from Kratos. Once her head is in our hands, Aphrodite grants us the ability to use her gaze for ourselves. Her gaze drains magic constantly while being used, but can, as expected, petrify our enemies. What the game doesn't tell you is that enemies petrified by Medusa's gaze drop a lot more blood orbs than if they were defeated normally. Now with Medusa we have to petrify and shatter 9 Minotaurs. Beating them normally will not work, as those that were not beaten using Medusa will respawn infinitely until beaten using the gaze. Once they are all dealt with, Aphrodite gives us her blessing and stops blocking the path forwards. Behind her altar are a few more enemies that can be ignored, and then, while we are climbing a ladder, we notice a dead soldier hung over a wooden beam behind us. Naturally, as every normal person with immunity to fall damage would do, we jump after him, but sadly we overshoot and fight some hidden chests instead. Up the ladder we find ourselves a crossbow ballista that can be shot in 3 directions. So we do just that and go gather our rewards from the left side before going through the path in front of us and again turning left to open up a shortcut. Now we go back the way we came and go to the right side, where we find even more armored zombies and a half-broken ladder leaning against the wall. We deal with the enemies near us and then climb the ladder, only to discover Kratos can climb the wall itself. There he has limited moveset, only one attack assigned to each offensive button, but is very mobile in all directions except downwards. Instead of continuing on, we take the left side to discover and reach the very first direction we shot the ballista bolt at. There we claim our treasure, jump back to the square and make use of the shortcut we opened earlier. Back to the climbable wall and the long hall begins. These wall climbing enemies usually aren't much of an issue, but at higher difficulties they resist a ridiculous amount of damage. Interestingly though, the higher the difficulty you play at, the more damage all enemies take from other enemies if you slam them into each other. Next, we take a totally legit and intended way down the wall, knock 2 enemies away and have Kratos moan a little before toppling a statue to the ground, the rubble of which perfectly aligns with where we need to go. For some reason there is an invisible barrier all around the statue area, except for a small opening where a ladder is hanging. I guess it makes sense in that once you actually made your way here, the enemies can just randomly push you down the roof, but for the only point of break from the barrier to be even further away than the enemies themselves can go is a bit much. On the other hand, nearly the entire statue area is off limits for enemies who will just spin in circles until we either get close enough for them to attack, or until we just leave. So with the statue toppled, we can now jump back down to the square and make use of the statue's rubble to climb up a damaged ladder hanging from a roof on the opposite side of the map. Up the ladder, we are greeted by 2 Gorgons. These will become a reoccurring enemy, however no Gorgon type enemy is as durable as Medusa was, so they are a lot easier to deal with. You can also perform multiple grab attacks on them as they bounce back up after being slammed to the ground. Also, as you would expect, Medusa's gaze does not work on Gorgons. With the Gorgons defeated, we make our way to the higher platform where 2 Minotaurs are waiting. This is where I noticed another thing that irks me. If you begin your combo with a heavy attack, you have no control over what Kratos targets, and for some reason, if there are both enemies and destructible objects nearby, Kratos will prioritize the objects more than the enemies. He also likes to do this with a combo of quick attacks, but there it isn't as noticeable. Still, to be able to properly target the Minotaurs, the destructible pillars must be destroyed first so that Kratos stops targeting them. Defeat 1 Minotaur and a Gorgon spawns. Defeat the other Minotaur and the Gorgon, and move up where quite a number of armored zombies lie in wait. The current goal is to fire off a ballista on the elevator platform right next to us, however the numerous enemies will often attack us as we try to do that. While it is possible to stagger them all for long enough that Kratos does fire the ballista, it is much more practical to just take care of all of them. So, we defeat the enemies, fire the bolt, and find out it had a rope attached. A rope that we can now climb. We jump on the rope and start climbing, and soon after, enemies start spawning. They are finite in number, but the number is quite high. As per our offensive options while on the rope, Kratos can kick in front of him, use a blade to slash, and also perform a grab attack with his feet to knock enemies off the rope. The enemies have a death pit only about a meter below the rope, but Kratos doesn't. This actually has a good reason. You see, orbs that are dropped by enemies don't fly towards you if you are a certain distance away from them. And if you fight on the rope in your first ever playthrough, the enemies will hit you a lot. However, defeated enemies drop some health orbs, so being aggressive in this case is the correct solution, but even that needs its specific approach. If you keep kicking or slashing enemies, either the front row or the back row will catch up to you and start attacking you. So what you need to do is damage the enemies closest to you once, then move towards them and quickly grab them to defeat them. While you are doing this, the enemy from the other side will slash at you but miss you. Once the enemy you are dropping off is defeated, you immediately perform the same sequence on the enemy that tried to slash you, and you repeat this process through the entire rope climbing. On lower difficulties it is much more manageable, but on higher ones it can prove quite a challenge. A small note: Kratos, the enemies, and neutral NPCs all have different invisible barriers and death pits. Kratos has it the easiest because punishing the player for all small mistakes would make the game really frustrating. The enemies have it the hardest because usually as soon as they leave their assigned platform, they are immediately killed, and NPCs simply hang around for a time to give Kratos some health orbs in case of an emergency, and once that is no longer a necessity, they run away. We finish up the rope climb and find ourselves on the backside of the large metal door from before, and another set of wooden doors that are being aggressively pounded on from the opposite side to us. We already know that the battle is in our near future, so let's run back to the first ballista and break open the wooden doors. This makes the Minotaur brothers behind feel very proud about finally breaking it down, and we meet their challenge head-on. Ironically, fighting 4 Minotaurs in a narrow corridor is easier because they don't strafe nearly as much to the sides due to the lack of space. You often end up fighting just one Minotaur while the rest are stuck behind him. This is also where I saw a very cool game mechanic. While holding Medusa's head, if a target can be petrified, they will have a blue aura around them, but if they can't be, that aura will be red. This way you will know whether you can try it or need not bother and rather save up your magic power instead. Anyway, after the defeat of the Minotaurs, we go the road they came from and soon find ourselves on the other side of the gate the 2 Athenian soldiers tried desperately to open before they were stabbed. However, we do not find their bodies. What we do find are 3 other bodies just a short trek up the path. At first I thought this was a world design oversight, but as we'll learn later in the game, that might not have been the case. But for now we continue walking the path until an apparition of Oracle of Athens appears.
Do not fear, Kratos. I am the Oracle of Athens, here to help you defeat Ares. Find my temple to the east, and I will show you how to murder a god.
After a quick chest examination, we learn that not only does the Oracle already know about Kratos and his mission, she seems weirdly enthusiastic, excited even, to explain how to murder a god. Onwards we go, and behind massive banners there stands a mad giant rampaging. You can already guess who it is. Also, his animation cycle gets reset for some reason as soon as the camera goes through the banners, even though he would look just fine during any of his animations. But this was probably just a failsafe first coded in before all of his animations were finished, and then it was left there.
God of war. I haven't forgotten you. For what you did that night, this city will be your grave.
And just like that, we have learned an important piece of information. Kratos is already familiar with Ares, the god of war, and under his breath he threatens him with vengeance. Perhaps Kratos speaks casually with Athena, and with at least some respect with Poseidon and Aphrodite, but he is outright hostile towards Ares the moment he sees him. This mission from the gods might be a lot more personal for Kratos than we were led to believe. Also, Ares himself seems to have taken notice of Kratos staring at him, as Ares also looked directly at Kratos for a brief moment. Anyway, he continues dominating the battlefield and throwing meteors wildly around him. At this point we have no choice of fighting him, so we simply have to go elsewhere. Perhaps finding that Oracle will prove to be a boon we now desperately need. Man, what the fuck? Moving through the half-destroyed city, Ares' meteors hit a nearby building, causing it to collapse and block our path forward. So we turn left, as that is the only path left, and another meteor hits the tunnel, making a gate fall down, trapping us in. You know, if Ares is this weirdly accurate with his projectiles, why doesn't he just directly hit Kratos with one? Yes, I know this is game logic, but later on we will see gates close on their own with no story trigger whatsoever. Well, let's ignore that for now. We find ourselves in a room with a new Minotaur-type enemy, wielding a warhammer and a war axe. There is a solitaire button in the room, that when pressed, opens up a gate at the very front of the room. However, it must be held pressed, otherwise the gate shuts close rapidly. Also, here we can see that certain quick-time events have a sort of expulsion field around them that doesn't damage enemies but pushes them away. This causes any nearby Minotaur to constantly use their counter move while we are busy with the event. The solution to this puzzle is easy though, as we just have to have one of the enemies step on the button for us. But even though the Minotaurs move slowly, they are not that slow. So we have to petrify one with Medusa's head while he is standing on the button. Now, a few years back, I did a test because I noticed that sometimes the Minotaurs do stand on the button for quite a long time on their own. However, when I looked at the gate's flag in its hex code, that flag was set to never activate if the button was pressed off screen. This means that even though it is possible to have the Minotaur stand on the button long enough, for example by launching them into the air and then running to the gate, the button is coded in such a way that the gate simply won't open unless the Minotaur is stepping on it on screen. This in turn means you absolutely must petrify one there, because otherwise there isn't enough time to make it to the gate, whereas if you lure the Minotaur to stand on the button from the back of the room, you'll have time of plenty. Since outsmarting this puzzle's design is sadly not an option, we petrify one poor bull on the button and move on. As we step outside, we can see some people running for cover and the city very much under siege. There are a lot of enemies and a lot of buildings to break into and loot. This is also the point where the game starts mixing enemy types together for a unique challenge. You have a Gorgon accompanied by two War Minotaurs. The Gorgon's biggest strength is her gaze, but that can be stopped if you attack her enough. However, attacking her too often causes her to retaliate after evading you. And if she retaliates successfully, she opens you up to attacks from the Minotaurs which you cannot block because you are staggered. So you go for the Minotaurs, but that's when the Gorgon starts petrifying you because you weren't aggressive enough. So now you cannot continue attacking the Minotaurs because they will retaliate and the Gorgon will petrify you. So the Minotaur's retaliation will kill you. You have to find a way around this combo of theirs, or, as is often the case, you can just ignore them and run past them. This feels like a good time to mention the ambience. As a player, you may not realize this, but you are effectively walking through a street that has one half of it missing because of Ares' attacks. It's as if the park that is on the other side of the road from your house simply didn't exist and was replaced by a deep chasm. Later on we come across some ropes that we can swing on. Once again, if you should fall, there is a solid ground beneath you so that you don't die for not immediately understanding how a new traversal mechanic works. But since I'm a God of War veteran, I flawlessly swing from one rope to the next on my first try. Now we have reached the Athens town square. There are a lot of stairs and a lot of destructible objects around. Ares saw how much fun we were having by destroying things and thought to himself he wanted to break something too, so he meteored the statue, sending it hurling down the stairs and hitting us. Up on the square an ogre drops from the sky and starts chasing us relentlessly. He moves very slowly but can build up his running speed over time and his attacks are deceptively fast. None of them can be blocked, but all of them can be rolled out of. This square is also filled with tons of civilians. As it turns out, the enemies can hit the civilians but they cannot kill them. However, the fact there is so many of them means they often get in the way, making it difficult to target the ogre. And if you stun him, good luck actually having Kratos focus on him with your button press instead of any of the civilians. Anyway, using the L1 plus square combo move in the air is very effective on the beast without hitting the people by accident. Defeat the ogre and two more spawn. Usually they just get in each other's way, so it is effectively still a one-on-one battle. There is just another combatant waiting in the reserve as soon as the first one falls. Deal with the reinforcements and the way forward opens up, along with the way back that all the NPCs will now take to run back to where Ares first blocked our path. Also, NPCs are immune to Medusa's gaze. Just thought I'd mention that in case anyone was wondering. Anyway, to the top left side of the arena are some treasure chests. We can get to them now, even though that is not intended to be possible, through the use of specific launch attack into jump combos, but I couldn't pull it off. I must have been taking a long time trying though, because one of the runaway NPCs ran back next to me and got stuck running into shut doors for some reason. Anyway, we are a good servant of the gods, so we do not kill innocents. Now, progressing through the unknown corridor in front of the NPC, we see a woman running away from us in fear the moment she sets eyes on Kratos, shouting to not pursue her. We are not even going specifically after her, but we are going along the same path for now. Nevertheless, as we run around observing the scenery, we notice some damaged pictures on the walls. Destroying them reveals them to be a disguise for some treasure chests and other valuables. There is also a distinct lack of enemies. Once we are done exploring, we move ever onwards on the path and stumble upon the woman once more. She somehow made it over a large gap in the floor, but maybe she was just very good at Halma. So we explore the area below the broken bridge, connecting the buildings, and discover no rubble underneath that will match the bridge's damage. So it either must have been destroyed for long enough that the people cleared away the rubble, or the world designers forgot to put some there. Yes, I'm nitpicking. I love this game to death, of course I will do my best to notice little things that no one cares about. Now let's climb back up, shall we?
I know who you are. I know what you've done. Monster.
Wait!
Stay back! Get away from me!
So this woman knows of Kratos and calls him a monster. This prompts Kratos to try and explain himself, but the woman again runs away. This is very unusual for the cold-blooded killer we have seen Kratos to be up to this point. Maybe he simply has a soft spot for women in distress. Anyway, as we still share the same path, we move ever closer to the woman, who now has no place left to run, so she leans against the balcony railing, but sadly trips over and falls to her death. Strangely, even though Kratos has shown some concern for her earlier, he has absolutely no reaction to this whatsoever. Also, on the European version of the game, it is possible to reach the woman quickly enough that we can see her dead body already on the floor below, even before she actually falls. However, on the American version I am playing now, there is a larger invisible barrier near her that doesn't allow us to see this. Oh, but look, a shiny on the woman's body. Let's go grab that real quick. Good thing Kratos is immune to fall damage. Turns out the woman had a key to our path forwards. So now we gotta go back through the damaged buildings, and here come the enemies, spawning absolutely everywhere. Also a new enemy type, armored zombies with magical shields. These shields make them invulnerable, but can be broken with any ground storm attack, like a square-square triangle combo. However, they are quite unfinished as far as game development goes. As soon as their shields are broken, they can be grabbed like the regular jaunt versions of them, and their shields just straight up don't work sometimes while they are in the process of spawning. You can even grab the shield bearer while he is holding his shield. And whoa, where are you off to in such a hurry? It feels like they were originally planned to be the jaunt version of zombie, but during development the devs thought they would look cooler as the armored version, which I agree with, but it seems they forgot to enable their defensive flags against grabs while switching them, as well as matching their health pools to what the regular armored zombies should have. Moving on, we can either fight or run past more enemies. This is also where it becomes very obvious that using Kratos' special blade attacks on the ground level is not a good choice under most circumstances, as weaker enemies can be dealt with easily enough without them, and stronger enemies will counter them way before we have a chance to put up our guard. So while fancy and cool to look at, none of the special attacks, besides one, are ever a good idea to use if not airborne. Finally, we reach the balcony again. To the left is a feather-containing chest, and to the right is a padlocked shaft that we have looted a key for from the terrified woman. But before all that, I slip and fall from the balcony. It's a good thing I saved the game literally a few seconds before that, as now I can just go to the pause menu, press restart from last checkpoint, and warp myself right back up. Turns out when jumping from the feather chest to the save point, I jumped onto the railing and then simply walked off. Let's pretend that never happened, yes? We unlock the shaft, jump in, open up a gate behind us for a shortcut if ever we need it, and head on further into the tunnel. A little ways in and we see more Athenian soldiers running towards us. Unfortunately for them, Ares fires off another meteor straight through the wall, hitting the floor and causing the roof to collapse onto them. So we head through the second tunnel and reach rooftops of Athens. Here are some climbable vines and the controls on them are very anti-intuitive. You would say pulling the analog stick to the left would cause Kratos to switch from the right vines to the left, but it's actually pulling it backwards, or towards the camera, that allows him to jump from right to left. So we struggle our way up, noticing Ares having fun in the background, and discover a new enemy type, the Brawlers. So, what do the Brawlers do? Well, they smile, of course. Look at those happy faces. Kratos' grab animations on them might just be my favorite from the entire game. They also have cool attacks that can be difficult to block against, and once they smile on the ground, The resulting attack is a 2-hit combo that, if hit by the first attack, will guarantee the second attack hits as well. Also, the smiling combo shows that even if perfectly blocked, not all enemy attacks can be countered. This is likely due to some attacks having more hitbox frames that remain active even if blocked, causing the initial perfect block to be mitigated. But they can still be blocked as normal. It's just the counters that can be performed. So in a typical God of War fashion at this point, there is a large amount of this new enemy type for us to fight. But this time defeating them doesn't let us progress further. However, there are archers to the side shooting at us. Chasing after them reveals an additional path hidden off in the corner where even more enemies lie in wait. It seems like we won't be getting out of here until all the hostiles are eliminated. So on the uppermost floor we fight more burrowers and the Cyclops as the city is being blasted to pieces in the background. And what the hell, Mr. Cyclops? How is this attack unfair? This is an attack the Cyclopes are supposed to use only after climbing up a wall to symbolize their struggle to do so and also their intelligence to launch their heavy armaments into the distance to make the last part of the climb easier to manage. But this one just did it out of nowhere. So we defeat this guy as well, go around the corner, collect our 6th feather which increases our maximum magic gauge as well as fully refilling it. And during the refilling we can see how the city is under constant earthquakes as a result of the terrible power Ares and his minions are unleashing there. Making our way downwards, we defeat the final enemy and unlock the large gateway at last, bringing the tense music to its climax. Going through, the music again picks up the tension as we see a group of soldiers running and being on the receiving end of yet another meteor. And then another one from the opposite direction? Guess not all the meteors are summoned by Ares, so maybe some of them could be trebuchet projectiles. I don't know. Anyway, we follow after the soldiers and grab onto more vines hanging from a pillar. We use them to jump onto the other pillar's vines, ignoring the archer's assault, and safely land on solid ground once again causing the music to calm down. Now, you are supposed to jump from the first vines to the building connecting to the platform where the archers are shooting at you from. However, since it is possible to jump across, I just opted for that instead. We move to the left as we are nearly struck by another Ares-like projectile, and 2 archers take their aim at us. However, the archers are too far up for our blades to reach them, so we go underneath the temple's roof, jump up, hit up the good old primordial sea storm, and the archer problem is solved. Now we shift focus to the area we find ourselves in. To the left there is a ballista, in front of us is a mural of a lightning-wielding person, which we can assume to be either Poseidon or more likely Zeus, and to the right is a small corridor that is blocked off by a barrier. Since the only option left is to go left, we decide to do that and take the ballista with us while we are at it. It is so heavy that Kratos has trouble using his kick this puzzle piece away technique, so we just slowly push it forwards. We find ourselves in a room with multiple shut doors on each side that Kratos can open with his strength alone and a wooden door at the center that he cannot. Game logic be damned, who thought it was a good idea to have half a meter thick doors openable by Kratos without outside assistance, but needing outside assistance to get through some wooden doors, while remembering that his blades can generate fire. This is not something that could be excused by saying, well, it is a game. This is just bad level design. Not because the level is difficult, but because it doesn't make logical sense in the game universe. The level itself is actually quite simple. You have impassable doors ahead of you and a siege weapon by your side. Only the weapon isn't rotated properly and Kratos cannot do it himself. You also have 4 doors, 2 on each side, to open, so open them. One of them has a gear in front and as soon as said door is open, enemies spawn and an epic music kicks in. This way we know we are on the right track. But we can still open the other doors as well just to see what is behind them. Turns out, not much. So we fight off the enemies and pull a lever from the very first door, and there it is. The lever causes a ladder to be moved towards us via a chain. A chain that gets in motion because the lever causes the gear outside the room to spin. I assume you already know the solution to this puzzle, but when I was but a wee lad, I didn't realize you could spin the wheel with the ballista on it, then remove the ballista from the wheel, spin it again, then move the ballista back onto the wheel and spin it one final time to rotate the weapon correctly. Just in case you were wondering, leaving that one enemy alive makes the battle music kick back in once it fades out after smashing through the front doors, so now we are stuck with an epic orchestra playing while we admire the next area. God of War can be quirky like that sometimes. Now we can pass through the hallway behind the impassable doors and find ourselves in a shrine to Zeus. There are 3 pictures: soldiers getting struck by lightning, Zeus throwing said lightning, and the Muse, one of Zeus's many daughters. Do you also feel like one of those is out of place? Anyway, we see the familiar landmark now, so it's time to acquire a new power.
Lord Zeus.
Kratos, you grow stronger as your journey continues. But if you are to succeed in your quest, you will need my aid. I offer you the power of the greatest of all the gods, the father of Olympus. I offer you the power of Zeus. Take this weapon, Kratos. Take this power and use it to defeat your enemies.
Zeus's power is, quite ironically since he is the leader of the gods, extremely underwhelming. It is so weak it is not worth using even on enemies that you cannot hit in any other way. That is, unless you upgrade it to the maximum level, where it becomes very powerful for some reason. But a new player wouldn't know to keep upgrading a magic that, even when once upgraded, is still the weakest thing you have available to you. Also, while this doesn't seem to be the case on the American version of the game, on European it was very easy to cause the boat to bug out and not shoot anymore. How, I hear you asking? Simple. Literally just keep using it. If you fire off enough lightning bolts in a row, they eventually just stop spawning projectiles. Don't worry though, they will still deplete your magic meter as usual. But anyway, now with Zeus's lightning in hand and his blessing for our quest, we return back to the Chaiway corridor, where it is revealed the mural was the backside of Zeus's shrine. 2 more archer zombies spawned on the roof, so we Poseidon those as well, and the final corridor is open at last. Inside we find numerous destructible objects, as well as a feather and an eye. We grab those and then leave this area forever. Going to the right now, we discover a save point inside a rather spacious room, almost as if a battle was supposed to take place there. We climb up the ladder, fight some harpies and minotaurs, and see how the grab button doesn't always target who we want when there are many enemies, and how it sometimes doesn't work at all even when only one enemy is nearby. So as usual, we kill everything in sight, then we explore a bit more, kill a bit more, then we get the Minotaur stoned and just for style points we shatter him with a lightning bolt, and the music calms down, meaning there are no more enemies to be found. We go up the platforms on the roofs. Zeus bought Wilhelm, who was holding a bridge shut to prevent the undead from entering, thus releasing the lever he was holding and crossing the bridge. In the European version, it was possible to softlock yourself here by using up all your magic and opening up all the magic chests in the area, because the chest at Zeus's shrine did not respawn infinitely. However, as far as I tested, the chest is in fact infinite in the American version, or at least it refilled 80 times and afterwards I concluded that it was infinite. Anyway, after crossing the bridge, we find some chests, some destructible things, some burrowers, you know the drill by now. Kill them or bypass them, take an elevator down and we can see in front of us a broken walkway and some stairs ahead.
Oracle!
Kratos! Praise Athena, you've arrived! No! Kratos! Kratos! Find me! You must find me! Athens depends on it!
God of War has had NPCs standing in place in the game world before when they were waiting for a cutscene trigger, but this time the Oracle, Harpies, and soldiers existed only inside the cutscene and not in the world itself. In the cutscene, they were not even shown just running down the stairs into the camera's view, which would have been the easiest solution if the world designers feared the game would lag having numerous NPCs loaded in advance. But oh well. So we follow after her and immediately lose balance on the balancing beam, causing a hint chat box to appear. Also the square below us is now covered in blood and bodies. After making our way through the balancing beam, we notice a set of chests off to the side. So we go for it and grab... Those invisible barriers really are unfair, huh? Oh, and look, the terrified woman from before on the floor is again glowing. I wonder what she has on her this time. And it's... nothing. Her glow effect simply wasn't removed for some reason. Anyway, let me try the jump again. I kept wailing on this infuriating jump and by some miracle I eventually Finally! Got it! I claimed my hard-earned treasure, and just to show you, yes, it is in fact possible to grab onto the edge of the platform. It just doesn't like to cooperate the other way around. Whoever is responsible for designing this level section, I want you to play it yourself on repeat for 1 hour straight as a punishment. Moving on, while re-deading the undead, it seems the L1 plus square special attack is becoming less and less viable, as enemies will retaliate and even block it in its entirety. Progressing through, we now reach the Oracle's temple. We cross the bridge and see her briefly once again.
Kratos! Kratos! Help me!
Once the Oracle was checked off, we saw some of the Harpies looking back and coming to challenge us. This would usually work as a new enemy introduction, however we never got any sort of cinematic introduction to the first type of Harpies, so it is impossible to tell if these ones are different in any way, making the whole show of them coming to greet us fall flat on its butt, much like these dive-bombing Harpies like to do. Anyway, Medusa's gaze is always a good counter for some Flappy Birds, as is promptly shown by an actual Gorgon spawning in as an additional enemy. Petrify the birds while keeping the Gorgons at bay. Easy enough. Once they are defeated, a ragged old man emerges from a grave he was apparently hiding out in during the battle.
Good, my boy, good. Athena has chosen wisely. I knew it was so.
Who are you?
So, you have the blades, the skin as pale as the moon. You are the one indeed. Perhaps Athens will survive at that. But be careful. Don't want you dying before I'm done with this grave.
A grave? In the middle of a battle? Who will occupy it, old man?
You will, my son. Oh, I've got a lot of digging to do indeed. All will be revealed in good time. And when all appears to be lost, Kratos, I will be there to help.
It seems this gravedigger is on Kratos' side, although he ominously mentions how the grave he is digging is intended for Kratos himself. This, however, did not seem to be a threat nor a warning. Seeing how the man got right back to his digging and was clearly not intending to impede our progress in any way, we simply moved on, leaving him to his work. Before entering the temple itself, we collect the treasure in the area. Once that is done, we can get to work rescuing the damsel in distress. Upon entering the temple, we are greeted by more harpies and with a gate to the left. We unlock the gate as soon as we enter so that the harpies don't have enough time to make it over to us and interrupt us. Then we grab the nearby magic refilling chest before heading up the stairs. Upstairs there are many balancing beams and the harpies can indeed fly all the way up here. So to progress, we have to quickly make our way across while fighting them off as we go, all the while remaining mindful of our fragile and narrow platforms we can stand on. We discover a hidden Gorgon eye, so we drink that and finally make it across. Or not. Turns out while it is possible to succeed in this way, I am simply not good enough to do so. Let's look for another way. Now back on the ground floor, we take note of two holes in the walls where the harpies are spawning from, and we make our way towards two massive statues in the very back of the room. These can be moved, so we move one of them opposite to the wall to the left and block any new harpies from coming in. Even though they could still squeeze through if they tried, but let's not talk about that. Then we return for the second statue. Along the way we rip off the wings from one nearby harpy, except that it survives, its wings intact, because we reach the edge of the floor, causing us to immediately stop our animation and restoring the harpy to perfect health. This has always been an issue with God of War in the early games. Not moving along, we take the second statue to the second hole in the wall, and now we can safely traverse the balancing beams. So we make our way across, having the camera sabotage us along the way, and are now one step closer to the Oracle. As we go through the corridor ahead, we can see the Oracle hanging from a rope, desperately holding on to it.
Kratos! Help me! Help! Kratos! Hurry!
So apparently we were not supposed to see her on the rope yet, as she was just dropped there during the cutscene. Okay, so you have NPCs spawning out of nowhere outside the temple during a cutscene, then you have an NPC already spawned before they are even supposed to be there outside of a cutscene. How much playtesting was done on this game, since his vision obviously kept shifting left and right all the time. Anyway, we stack two statues on top of each other, notice that the sealed gate to the far right has a few pixels of balancing beam physics, jump onto the higher platform, then onto the statues, and start our dash towards the princess's rescue. Following is a very easy platforming section with lots of time allocated, so we even grab a feather along the way and still finish with time to spare.
And with that act, Kratos set in motion the events that would lead to his downfall.
Kratos, as Athena herself has foretold. But you are late, perhaps too late to save Athens. Or is it Athens you have come to save?
No! I can't! We must not stop!
And when the Oracle looked into his soul, she saw a beast as well as a man. Once a captain in the Spartan army, Kratos had begun his command with only 50 soldiers. But soon his numbers grew to the thousands. His tactics were brutal, but effective. Drunk with power, he was feared by all, except one. His wife was the only one to brave his fury.
How much is enough, Kratos? When will it end?
When the glory of Sparta is known throughout the world.
The glory of Sparta. You did this for yourself.
His desire for conquest knew no bounds, but that which he desired would ultimately consume him.
By the gods, why would Athena send one such as you?
Stay out of my head!
Choose your enemies wisely, Kratos. Your brute strength alone will not be enough to destroy Ares. Only one item in the world will allow you to defeat a god. Pandora's box, which lies far beyond the walls of Athens, hidden by the gods across the desert to the east. But be warned, Kratos. Many have gone in search of Pandora's box. None have returned.
Kratos set in motion the events that will lead to his downfall. How much lower could he get? The people hate him, the gods use him, he is tormented by his past and has little left to live for. What, do you mean to tell me he'll destroy the world? Ahaha, like that would ever happen. Ahaha. Now with a clear goal in mind and the way to kill a god, we set off to the treacherous desert of lost souls, and the Oracle switched back from her cutscene white to her overworld green coals. After exiting the corridor, we climb up the side of the mountain to enhance our magic meter and discover massive doors, a deactivated statue of Athena, and an ominous cliff giving Kratos a sense of foreboding. If you were paying attention to the very beginning of the game, you would know why. But let's head back and walk across the sword bridge into the sewers. Inside we discover a new archer-type enemy, one that has a bit more health and shoots unblockable arrows that explode after a while. The sewers are filled with monsters everywhere, however you don't actually have to fight any of them. You can just walk on by. However, since I need the blood orbs for upgrades, I fought them all. Not much happens here, but I did get Zeus's lightning to maximum while here, so here is a little showcase and then we'll move right on. Reaching the light at the end of the sewer, we climb up the ladder, walk up many stairs, and pull a lever to discover that the projector floor the Oracle first spoke to us through was the centerpiece of this staircase, and its surrounding golden plates are in fact folded stairs. We walk up and out of the sewer, once again crossing the road to Athens and turning right to reach the desert. In front of the massive gate there is a Gorgon eye we can launch on, and 10 steps later there is another eye behind the gate that elevates our maximum health to a new level. As we look ahead of us, we see massive sandstorms raging around, discouraging us from proceeding. But if zombies didn't stop us, neither will some grains of dirt.
Kratos, the journey forward is perilous, but one you must complete if you are to have any hope of saving Athens.
The Oracle spoke of Pandora's box. Can it be real?
The box exists. It is the most powerful weapon a mortal can wield.
And with such a weapon, I could defeat Ares.
With the box, many things become possible, and so it is hidden well, far across the desert of lost souls. There is safe passage through the deadly sands, but only those who hear and follow the siren's song will discover it. You must find the sirens, Kratos. Only they can guide you to Kronos, the Titan.
A Titan lives?
Kronos is the last. Zeus has commanded him to wander the desert endlessly, the temple of Pandora chained to his back, until the swirling sands rip the very flesh from his bones. Stay true to the song of the siren, Kratos. Your journey begins here. Pray it leads you back to Athens, with Pandora's box. Follow the song of the sirens, Kratos. Find and destroy them all, and the path through the deadly sands will be open to you.
To cross, we need to kill 3 sirens. Sounds doable, although in this sort of a sandstorm the visibility is far from ideal. There are a lot of treasure chests scattered around, but this time we will focus solely on the task at hand. At first, only one siren exists, and the others will spawn once this one is defeated. The first one is actually very easy to beat, since you can cheap shot her from a distance before triggering her encounter scene. Hitting her in any way will trigger it, however she will be put back into neutral state, so we can shoot her with a second superbolt and that will damage her enough for the cinematic kill option to pop up. Do that and Kratos hugs the siren a bit too much, causing her soul to leave her body.
You must find and destroy the 2 remaining sirens before you may pass.
After each kill, Athena mentions how many sirens remain. Find the other 2 via sound references and move on. Sirens will appear again later in the game as fodder enemies, but these specific 3 here are special. They are the only ones who can switch between being hostile or neutral, and they don't become hostile if you are near them, only if you attack them. They are also the only sirens that cannot be killed in any way other than a cinematic kill. So we kill the remaining sirens and a temple door opens before us. Also, if you are really lost but have magic, you can use Poseidon's Fury to temporarily remove the blinding effect of the sandstorm. Inside the temple, we refill our gauges, and as we go through the corridors, the light struggles to work properly. Down the overpass we see a conveyor belt, and at the far right is a crusher wheel. On the far left is our path forward, but it is too high to reach without exploits. So we open up a heavy door, behind which lies a box. This box is generally indestructible other than the crusher wheel, so we don't have to act careful around it. As soon as the box hits the conveyor belt, enemies start jumping us. As always, we don't actually need to defeat them, and they cannot break our precious box, but they will interrupt our attempts at moving it. Also, the belt moves just a tiny bit faster than the things on it for some reason. So, deal with the enemies, move the box, deal with others, move the box, and so on until it is close enough to jump on and reach the edge of the high path. Continuing on, we come across 2 murals, one showing how Hades, Poseidon, and Zeus appeared before an architect called Patroclus III and commanded him to build a temple, and the other mural showing how the completed temple was mounted onto Kronos' back. So now we know who built the temple we would need to scour Pandora's box for. Anyway, there is a massive impassable sand wall in front of us along with a horn. We blow the horn and it blows away the sand, revealing a cool path through. Next we see a second horn, but this one is carried away by the sands, which are so strong they force Kratos to shield his eyes, even though he had no need for that in the desert itself. So out come more sirens and a pretty boring fight ensues. There are way too many sirens in this battle that pose little to no threat. You can hit all of them with 2 charged Zeus' bolts and they die. I honestly don't know why this fight is here. It feels like it either misses something or should not have been here at all. Also, this many sirens appearing right after we just defeated the unique desert sirens greatly reduces their appeal as new enemy types. So we defeat this horde, the horn comes back on the wings of the sand, we blow on it, and Kronos arrives for a visit.
Kronos, the last of the mighty Titans, emerged from the desert sands. On his back, Pandora's temple awaited, massive and patient, ready to challenge all who went in search of its guarded treasure. For 3 days, Kratos climbed the sheer walls of the mountain. He knew he would either recover Pandora's box or perish inside the cursed temple, never to return to the world of man.
Right as Kratos is about to finish his climb, we can see a bird devouring a corpse. If we kill this bird, it restores some health just like the civilians do if Kratos kills them. Nice attention to detail. But moving on, we cross the absolutely massive wooden bridge across a chasm to reach the entrance gate of the temple. At the end of the bridge, we get our camera showing us an elevated platform where a zombie is dragging a dead soldier across the floor. Since the gate into the temple is shut tight, it seems reaching the zombie is our next course of action. We go to the left and across the path leading downwards until we come across a set of stairs that must be pulled far enough out of the wall as they immediately start retracting back into the wall the moment we let go of their handle. Anyway, let's greet the zombie man.
So, you think you can conquer the Temple of the Gods, do you? It's never been done, you know. Sooner or later, the Harpies will bring what's left of you back for me to burn. The gods hid Pandora's box in here, so no mortal would ever claim its power. And yet, year after year, I open the gate for more and more soldiers and place more and more bodies on these pyres. If I were you, I'd leave now. But I can see you are determined. Very well. May the gods grant you strength to conquer the perils that lay before you. Good luck, Spartan.
From the tone of his voice you can tell the zombie man is really fed up with his curse by this point. So with a warning in tow, we explore a bit and learn that the fallen soldiers seeking Pandora's box are recycled into enemies to be used by the temple. When we talk to the zombie man again, he reveals he was the very first to ever attempt to conquer the temple. His current state is the result of his failure. But there is nothing more to be done here, so we jump down to cross the gate. And, of course, we are ambushed by a pair of Cyclops elites. These enemies are faster and deadlier than their predecessors. Also, using Medusa's locks on them isn't a very good strategy, as it takes a long time to petrify one, and even when you do, the second one will still be interrupting you while the first one doesn't take all that long to liberate himself from this stone prison. Fully charged Zeus's lightning is still very effective though. When any one Cyclops is defeated, a third one spawns. Defeat them all and the path to the temple will be open. So we refill our mana and head on in. We spin the bullheaded crank to open the actual entrance to the inside of the temple as the music erupts into a glorious cheer that ends somewhat ominously. Seeking glory through a path of peril. Nice tone setting there. Once we enter the temple, the gate promptly shuts closed behind us. We are greeted by a new type of brawlers that have more HP, but otherwise are identical to the regular ones. Then a pair of archers spawn at the very end of this room. This battle is kind of boring honestly. You either first beat the brawlers or the archers, but since the brawlers push you with their attacks when you block them, they don't have a good synergy with their archer allies. We defeat all the enemies and read the book written by Patos Verdis, which glorifies Zeus and challenges heroes to conquer the dangers and puzzles. Next we interact with the mural at the end of the room and this causes some letters to light up. O, D, A, Sigma, Delta, D, Rho, D, A, R, Delta, O, D, A is certainly what the letters are. No need to double check. Now that the letters are bright, the vault door rolls away and we can cross. As soon as we make it through, the path backwards is sealed. Wonder if this will become a regular occurrence. We start going through the right section of the circular platform until we come across some spiked barriers repeatedly opening and shutting closed at dangerous speeds. Crossing them isn't all that difficult however. Once we do, we find a room with two statues, each holding a half piece of a diamond-patterned egg. Anyway, we pull the lever behind them, which stops the spiked barriers and leaves them all open, as well as lowering a lever platform outside. We connect the two diamond pieces, which emit a beam of light that gets interrupted by a skull door. This door cannot be opened with the equipment and items currently at our disposal, so we walk back the way we came. Once we exit the trapped corridor, we can make use of the lever platform. This platform rotates the entire ringed wall, possibly revealing more entrances to other corridors. And we come across one such corridor pretty swiftly, revealing a path towards Golden Door adorned by numerous carvings of Muses, the daughters of Zeus. However, two of them are missing. We keep this in the back of our minds as we return to rotate the lever platform some more and reveal another corridor with the all too familiar god symbol spinning on the altar. Let's see what kind of gift we receive this time.
Artemis.
Kratos, the gods demand more of you. You have learned to use the blades of chaos well, but they alone will not carry you to the end of your task. I offer you the very blade I used to slay a titan. Take this gift and use it to complete your quest. Take this weapon, Kratos. Take this power and use it to defeat your enemies.
The fact all gods need to say the exact same line by the end of their dialogue makes this specific dialogue weaker. Artemis effectively said the same sentence twice in a row. Anyway, now, not with her bow, but with her blade of all things, we march on, discovering the challenge of Atlas. Just as a reminder, Atlas is a titan that in this game's mythos was already defeated in the Great War and placed in Hades to hold the world on his shoulders, as it were. So why would Atlas place a challenge inside the Temple of Pandora that was specifically built to house a weapon created by the gods, built on the order of the gods, and placing praise on the gods in every corner? I mean, Artemis just now spoke to us. Just name it the challenge of Artemis and the whole problem is solved. This makes no sense. But things making no sense is something we will experience more of later. For now, let's have fun with the blade Artemis bestowed upon us. I will be honest right off the bat. This weapon seems unfinished. It is slow, leaves you wide open with nearly all of its attacks, doesn't have any form of counter mechanic. The Blades of Chaos could counter from the very beginning in a way that interrupts the attacks of enemies. Its level ups just increase its damage, and for some godforsaken reason it has an attack assigned to the circle button as well, making grabbing enemies nigh impossible. The only good thing I can say about this weapon is that its sound effects are very satisfying, but other than that, it is a complete waste of time and should be avoided at all costs if you are playing on harder difficulties. The risk the blade brings with its functionality is in no way worth the reward it provides in terms of offensive power. On a side note, the blade guarantees that enemies killed by it on ground floor are mutilated in a certain way. For example, slashing basic zombies in half and decapitating minotaurs. This effect also applies to enemies killed by Poseidon's Rage, as long as you had Artemis's blade equipped at the time of activation. This, however, introduces its own bug that causes some enemies to rip apart only after their I am taking damage animation finishes. Also sometimes, even if you slash at an enemy with your grab button and they survive, Kratos will just instantly revert to his idle animations without attempting to grab said enemy. Anyway, this is the part of the game where the developers just started spamming large number of enemies to fight all at once for some reason. Here we fight some old drowned and a new type of Gorgon, but we fight like 8 of these Gorgons at the same time, and they all like to use their gaze, and their gaze lasts about twice as long as that of regular Gorgons. Did the developers just run out of ideas? Because the level design is still solid. I like this area, but the battles inside these areas are becoming boring. I'll just let this battle play out for you and you let me know in the comments if this looks like fun to you. And look how I attacked one Gorgon, but then Kratos started grabbing a different Gorgon for some reason, without any direction given by me for him to do that. Also, each time you use magic while Artemis's blade is equipped, once you stop using magic, Kratos automatically does his Artemis blade activation animation, which leaves you wide open to any attacks that you would be able to dodge if you had Blades of Chaos equipped instead. Well anyway, once all the enemies are defeated, We move upwards on the broken staircase where more enemies are, so we get rid of them and activate the lever to lower down a diving bell? Well, whatever that is, we use its rope to climb down. Lowering this bell also gets rid of the instant death area that was there up until now. It makes sense that there would be something, because if you jumped in without the bell, there would be no way to get back up later, but the developers could have just placed some breakable floor there, especially since we now know there is some floor beneath the death pit. And we also know Kratos is immune to fall damage. But oh well. So onto the horizontal rope we grab, and we fight off many enemies. In the background we can also see a surprisingly large number of other heroes trying to conquer the temple. Makes you wonder just how many possible entrances this temple has and how many of these heroes were effectively sent to their deaths by visions from the gods. Once we reached the end of the rope, I decided to upgrade Poseidon's Rage as I know this next challenge contains so many enemies that you can't really pick and choose your approach. And just as we pick up a Shield of Hades, one of two relics we need to open a sealed door, despite the battering ram at the start of the corridor starts slowly approaching. Interestingly, it is possible to run back fast enough to squeeze through the space between the ram and the path we took up here, thereby circumventing the entire challenge. Or at least it would have been if the devs didn't put an invisible barrier there. So anyway, we fight this insane amount of enemies, using basically everything at our disposal to kill them as swiftly as possible, because despite the slow pace at which the battering ram moves, there isn't much time to wipe them all out. Utilizing all of our magical reserves, and the fact enemies thrown from a grab deal increased damage to other enemies the harder the difficulty you play on, we managed to beat them off with a lot of time remaining. I honestly didn't expect it to go this smoothly, but I won't complain. Also a nice touch is that if you touch the battering ram, it doesn't damage you. It will simply push you along and at the end crush you if you run out of time. Considering the front of the ram is made of wood, it makes sense that touching it wouldn't do much to you. So whether intentional or not, kudos to you, developers. We replenish our health and mana, and after some struggling to grab a hold onto the climbing rope, we make our way back up and take the path to the right. There, a cart with wood and also more of those annoying blue gorgons await us. We need the cart to open a revolving door with a button that is far too far away for us to do it ourselves, and that tends to bug the door out, leaving it in the incorrect state. It is as simple to fix as just standing on the button ourselves, so it's not that much of an issue. We get into position, kick the cart towards the button, roll backwards, and the cart and the door do the rest. Once on the other side, we are once again ambushed by the armored zombies. They really did start spamming the enemies literally everywhere. Climb up a ladder and collect Zeus's shield. With both relics in hand, we open the sealed door and progress further in. Inside, we find the grinding wheel trap. And again in a nice player-friendly fashion, if you are hit by a wheel just as it finishes its rolling cycle, it will not damage you twice by rolling over you as it starts rolling backwards. These grinding wheels are guarding two levers that must be used in quick succession, and then we must also make our way through the bars they keep shut, otherwise they will reset themselves. Once this is done successfully and we pass through, the bars will remain open forever. We lift up a shut door and stumble upon a colossal statue gripping a large boulder. Behind it is a chest with a muse key. There is a crank in front of the statue but no handle to operate it with. Running to the end of the corridor reveals some damaged doors that we cannot pass through. They are also nicely round. Can you tell what will happen in a little bit? Anyway, since there is nothing we can do, we make our way to the path hidden off to the right side, and despite being the perfect fit for even more spam of the armored zombies, there is nothing. So we go all the way to the overlook of the area where we find some chests with bod orbs, which are always nice, and then we jump down and go back from whence we came. To the right of the grinding wheels there is a path, and oh look, there are the armored zombies. There are also spiked crushing traps on a conveyor belt that we can actually use to our advantage to take down the enemies. At the end of the conveyor belt we find some harpies and treasure hidden off in the scenery. After collecting it we jump back onto the bridge and come across massive climbing walls filled with enemies. It is a bit absurd just how many there are, but on the other hand you can do fun stuff like this. Also, if you fight a group of enemies that respawns until a certain condition is met, they will eventually stop dropping bod orbs. However, there are so many enemies that even though they are not infinite, the last one also doesn't drop any bod orbs. Continuing on, we reach the end of the walls and pull a lever to drop down a spike for easy access to the floor where we began our climb from. After replenishing our magic supply and collecting the treasure hidden at the base of the chain, we head on inside the ominous room where our next challenge awaits. Inside this room, There are shielders and sirens. Every so often the floor underneath us all bobs, warning of an imminent danger should we take too long. The challenge therefore is to defeat all enemies in the given time limit. Looking back on it, the environment and enemies might have been changed, but the gameplay remained the same for quite a few portions of the game. We collect our prize, the missing crank handle, and head back where we needed it. This time, however, the entire area is flooded with enemies. Also, this is a bit of a nitpick, but once we reattach the missing handle to the crank, it looks really out of place, as if the handle had a different shader applied to it compared to the crank itself. Oh, and there are the missing enemies. And there's a lot of them too. What are the odds, am I right? So we ignore the vast majority of them, because honestly at this point I am over fighting the same enemy every 2 minutes, and finally reach the overlook where we pull the lever that activates the stone the Colossus was holding. Why did the Colossus perform additional actions? Pulling the lever upstairs triggers a beam to shoot out from the wall behind him, which should simply tear the stone out of his hands and send it tumbling, but instead, firstly the beam takes longer to trigger, and secondly it somehow forces the Colossus to change his posture further before throwing the stone himself. There is no consistency. Moving on, the stone breaks through the door at the end of the path, which we now take, leading us towards a coffin and the book. My youngest son will laugh no more. Death in the service of his father. Death in the service of the gods. The building of this temple has claimed his life. May you be lucky enough that it did not claim yours. Written by Patos Verdes. So the good old architect lost his son while constructing the temple, yet in his words he seemed more patronizing rather than regretful or mournful. If you know anything about psychology, you will know this reveals his mental state is deteriorating. He still seems lucid, but the lines between common human sense and madness are starting to get blurry. In the surrounding area there is nothing noteworthy, so we decide to open up the coffin, and by ripping off the architect's son's skull, we have gained means to open the skull door that was blocking the light beam in the rings of Pandora. Upon having desecrated the body of the sun, his coffin moves out of the way to reveal a canal-like entrance connecting to a hidden path. If you stop to think about this whole scenario for a bit, the architect type progressed through the temple behind the act of ripping off his dead son's head. If you didn't take the head, he would be stuck, unable to progress. Makes you wonder just what kind of person this Patos was. The path we now walk through is coated in eerie green glow and a surprising lack of enemies. As we continue on, we come across a scene of a massacre which triggers some of Kratos' memories to resurface.
The wrecked bodies of those who had gone in search of Pandora's box lay before him, and at once Kratos knew who was responsible. For this was not the first time he'd seen the ruin Ares and his minions had left in their wake. Kratos had experienced it firsthand, years before. The youngest and boldest captain in the Spartan army, Kratos inspired fierce loyalty in his men. It had always been enough to carry them through any battle, until this day. The barbarians to the east numbered in the thousands, and descended on the Spartans without mercy. The battle lasted near hours. The discipline and training of the Spartans did little to stem the tide of the merciless barbarians. The soldiers faced a massacre, while their young captain faced the end of his brilliant career and his life. But to Kratos, victory was worth any price, even his soul.
Ares! Destroy my enemies, and my life is yours.
That desperate call for aid would come to haunt Kratos for all his days.
By the gods, what have I become?
Very polite of the barbarian king to just keep holding his attack and not actually unleash it while Kratos was busy chatting with Ares. Was he auditioning for a boss position in Elden Ring? Though I suppose you could excuse it, as it being customary to not interrupt a man when he asks gods for aid. Suddenly it makes sense why there were no enemies nearby. It was not just so the cutscene would trigger, but also because it allowed Kratos a moment to think. Usually when he passes by massacred people, he is busy fighting monstrosities, but this time there was nothing he could keep himself occupied with, so upon seeing the dead bodies, he shook his head in horror at what he has turned into since becoming the champion of the gods. We finish our walk through this passageway and reappear at the light-emitting diamond statues. We go once again through the squashers, once again get ambushed by dead things, once again kill them all, the passageway once again closes behind us once we leave, and we use the sun's skull to open the skull door. Behind it is a crusher wheel doing circles around the rings of Pandora. Touching it from front will instantly kill us. So we circle around the ring and find stairs leading upwards. Standing at the top triggers a camera change to show us where we should go. Since our goal is a ladder that cannot be reached from the ground floor, we make use of the deadly trap, which now serves as our platform. From it we jump onto the ladder. Having dealt with the crusher wheel, we once again start our climb and shortly after reach the top. Passing through the corridor, we find ourselves at the challenge of Poseidon. Poseidon's challenge is to defeat a large amount of Hades' Cerberus hounds. The sound effect of when they fully mature is perfectly ominous, but don't delete stones hypnotize you, for every single young Cerber pup can grow into a Cerberus. Dealing with one or two at once isn't that bad, but fighting off 5 fully matured hounds is a real challenge. What is clever about this is that it forces you to play 2 fighting styles at the same time. Calm and cautious for the hounds, but quick and savage for the pups, so that they don't have enough time to transform. Once they are all defeated, we continue on and find ourselves a large box stuffed full of arrows. This is meant to be used as a mobile shield against the upcoming artillery fire of many archers, but the archers have explosive arrows and are very good at striking the block in just the right way to always cause you damage. You are better off not using this block at all and just charging straight at them. You will likely be shot at least once, but that is still less damage than you would take by relying on the protective block. Defeat the archers, press on and find another pack of Cerberus. We have just finished fighting a gauntlet of these dogs, yet here they are again, once again completely ruining the grandiose spectacle of their first appearance just 1 minute ago, and once again in a large number, meaning you are effectively fighting the same battle twice in a row. Why do you keep doing this, developers? You introduce a cool new enemy, make them a special challenge, and just moments later they are already reduced to fodder enemies. Have some patience, please. Anyway, we beat all the Cerberus and archers and find ourselves in a revolving platform. As it rotates, it exposes treasure chests with useful blood orbs. Grabbing these chests is quite challenging as you have a very small window of opportunity to do so. On the other hand, if you opt for not collecting them, you can just wait out the room's rotation and safely cross over to the next section. It is here that we are introduced to my favorite enemy type, Reapers. They are very tanky, have long combos and cool animations. While fighting them, you can see how Kronos wanders the desert. Once they are beaten, climb the wall, claim a muse key and eventually reach a new type of Minotaur, purple one. These are nearly identical to the armored ones from Athens, but they traded their war axe for increased mobility and durability. Defeat them and go into the infamous Dusty Mile of Sacrifice. As you approach, the camera focuses onto the warriors trapped in cages before allowing us to continue. As usual, the middle crank is missing a handle, so we go acquire it. Run all the way into the chamber and find a note next to a corpse that reads, "What the gods ask of me, no man could do. Not even Pandora's box is worth such a terrible price." Luckily, we are a monster, not men. We pick up the handle and read the inscription on the door of Poseidon blocking our path. Sacrifice the ultimate to continue your quest. And the door itself is surrounded by flaming pillars. This is the second time Poseidon's challenge was based on Hades' iconography. Well, we run back to the crank, attach the handle, lower a prisoner's cage down and tell him we plan to sacrifice him. Unsurprisingly, he is not too thrilled about this idea and pleads for his life. While carrying him up the dusty mile, more reapers appear. Interestingly, they are not outright hostile. They become hostile only once they see Kratos, but they cannot see him through the cage itself, meaning you can get quite a head start before engaging in combat. Medusa's head turned out to be quite effective against them. So we drag the man all the way to the chamber and pull the lever, incinerating him. This satisfies Poseidon's condition and the door is now open to us. Upon passing through, we finally see the first room that actually looks like it has something to do with the god of the seas, along with the trident sticking out of an Excalibur stone. We pull the trident out of the stone, then Kratos spins it around and jams it back in for some reason, and then he collects it, making the trident disappear from the stone. Am I the only one confused at this? Anyway, with the trident in hand, we can now breathe underwater indefinitely. We make use of this to traverse an underwater tunnel, where we re-emerge at the third Cerber Gauntlet. After fighting them off and pulling a lever, a set of hidden stairs emerge from behind Poseidon's statue in the original room. So we return to said room, find ourselves to Cerberus, it's honestly ridiculous at this point, and we climb the stairs, and finally find ourselves in sunken ruins. Yep, that's right, water! And we find a Naiad, Poseidon's daughter, so we give her a big ol' smooch, and she laughs at our face and dips. A little later on we find a second one, and if Kratos kisses both of them, he will receive a feather. We emerge, fight more Reapers, and discover a new bug. Sometimes, if the damage animation is interrupted by the world map, the weakened enemy will have a circle above their head, but they will not actually be grabbable. Once we find our way through the sunken ruins, we are presented with a bunch of armored zombies and dive-bombing harpies. Defeat them all, pull a lever, and open a gate to the next underwater section. For some reason, pulling this lever also corrupted my in-game audio, though this is likely just an issue with the emulation, not with the game itself. And saving the game fixed this. Now we have an underwater crusher trap. There are rapidly moving walls that will drag you along and squash you at the end of the room if they catch you, but there are also holes in the floor where you can wait out their cycle. Be sure to dive deep enough though, because even the wheels that move the walls can still hit you. Escape the trap and find a lever room with some purple minotaur. These can actually be knocked into the water, which will kill them instantly, but managing to do that seems to be more luck than skill based. Once they are beaten, we can pull the lever in peace, which extends massive pillars from the waters, allowing us to reach the distant platform ahead of us. The platform itself doesn't offer us much, except for one crucial, multi-layer hint. If you read the book in the middle, it reads that Amphitrite, Poseidon's wife, knows the way out of this room. And if you look at her statue, her index finger is pointing into the waters below. So we return to the lower platform, pull the lever again, but this time examine the pillars instead of stepping on them. The farthest one features a shaft that we swim into. Finishing our swim, we find ourselves back in the room with the statues holding halves of the diamond egg. We return to the rings of Pandora, and now with 2 Muse keys in hands, we can unlock that special door. Inside we find gifts from Zeus. The book pedestal does state that the gods offer these gifts, however interacting with all 3 of them always says they are from Zeus, even though Pandora's temple contains challenges from Zeus, Poseidon, and later Hades as well. Feels like an oversight. Moving swiftly along, we return to the crusher wheel area, and, now equipped with the trident, we can explore the pool of water, find an underwater tunnel, swim through, and finally discover the most memorable part of Pandora's temple, at least for me. Massive wooden door with a seal with motif of a minotaur. But for now there is nothing we can do, so we continue to the right and eventually discover the challenge of Hades at last. And this one does actually look like it fits the god it is associated with. An ominous, dark hall with flowing lava. We explore sideways and discover an elevated platform that is difficult to reach for some reason. I remember it being very easy to reach on the European version, but I really struggled to get there on the American version. Anyway, with that handled, we explore the ornamental door and get presented with a challenge. Defeat a total of 8 centaurs in specified zones. As a concept, this is perfectly fine, however, what makes this challenge annoying is not even the enemies themselves, but the way they die. If you kill them using quick-time events, they fall sideways, and if you pummel them down with regular attacks, they retreat quite a ways backwards before succumbing to their injuries, meaning if your positioning is correct, if the enemy decides to die in a specific way, He can move outside of the kill zone ring, thus not progressing the challenge. On lower difficulties it is manageable, but try this on God difficulty and win without rage quitting. But back to the challenge. Once all 8 centaurs are sacrificed to Hades, the ornamental door falls and we can proceed. After overcoming some traps, the second challenge awaits, an actual gauntlet this time. We find ourselves in a rather large area comprised of numerous smaller corridors where we need to find and destroy them all, and the path to the deadly temple will be open to us. Also a new bug with the Blade of Artemis. When striking enemies with it, sometimes they die only once their current attack animation finishes. Also, sometimes the enemies don't really feel like attacking all that much. Anyway, once all the sirens are destroyed, the bot-filled door slides down, and an additional little block slides in to fill the hole in the floor left behind by the door. This is a cool little detail by the devs, where they could have easily just left the door itself as an uneven floor with solid hitbox, but instead they actually filled the floor itself properly with a new block to fill the space. As we go further, we are now on a balcony overlooking the Centaur challenge and see some rotating blades overhead. So let's activate the statue of Hades and see it rise from a pool of blood. As a faithful devotee, the moment his icon raises, we dunk ourselves into the blood swiftly and find his hidden lever. We activate it, and
you turned on the light! Pretty!
We then climb Hades' statue, twist his neck a little, and light up an enormous corridor, through which an actual hellspawn starts sprinting towards us and blocks the... oh no, sorry. It is just some flaming rocks. Let's go say hello. The rocks are actually very generous with their hitboxes, allowing you to dodge all through them without taking damage if you stick to the walls. But even without abusing this, the hole is simple enough to deal with. The rocks always spawn in a repeating pattern, so observe them for a while and problem solved. I guess the correct door to open, but still go into the center of the room for a magic gauge enhancing feather. Returning to the door, we now find yet another new Minotaur type, an armored War X one. Just like the purple ones, these ones traded one of their weapons for increased power, speed and durability. Also the archers can apparently cancel out their quick time event kill on the Minotaur, which is an unexpected but welcome addition. Defeating them all allows us access to an overlook to dispatch archers that would swiftly eliminate us later if left alone. The rest of this area is quite uneventful, just containing some more battles. And so we find ourselves at those overhead slicers at last. Now this environmental detail I didn't know myself, but Josh Strife noticed that the platforms we walk across have cut marks on them that outline the actual reach of the spinning blades, making it easier for you to gauge distances. You can actually skip a few portions of this area if you are comfortable making risky jumps across chasms. For the majority of the time, the camera is giving you a top-down view of Kratos so that you can comfortably navigate him while having enough time to react to the hazardous blades. However, once you are beyond the reach of any given specific trap, the camera starts normalizing to a sideways view instead, which can easily mess with your risky jumps forward. The thing is, I understand this design decision, because you need to know what is ahead of you once the trap is passed. On the other hand, it is not very quick play friendly. Well, once we pass the traps and hazards, we find ourselves in a dimly lit corridor, awash with ominous obsidian hues, and a rather light bull wheel. Once we spin it, the massive wooden door's seal is undone, and an immense force starts bashing against it from the inside. Once we return to the door, a new set of gate doors locks us in. The time for a boss fight is nigh. The Minotaur boss, or Pandora's Guardian, is my favorite moment from this game. He looks awesome, his steam-powered armor is cool, he is imposing, powerful, has a vast assortment of attacks, is very easy to beat on the upper platform, but very challenging on the ground level, and has an amazing battle theme. The perfect God of War boss. Even his health bar is dynamic and changes visuals during the fight. Although you can just do this and beat his armored face in a few seconds. But there is one thing I dislike. This phase. You have to do quite a few analog stick rotations in quite a short window, and you have to do that twice. My brother used to have trouble with this and always asked me to handle it for him. But see, this bull even brings families together. Such a good boy. Well, once we bring his health to a critical level, he becomes stunned, and we finally pin him to the door he was trapped behind. and he even opened the door for us. But now that we actually step inside, how did he fit in there? The walkway Kratos uses is barely wide enough to fit him, let alone a boat 20 times his size. Well, we now stumble upon what seems to be an altar, but is actually a tomb for Patroclus' second son. And at last, the architect himself gives voice to his pen as he mourns, questioning why the gods keep demanding more and more from him with each passing day, even though he already is their faithful servant. So we rip off his son's skull and go back the way we came, until we find the last divine altar that will grant us the final ability. Also, this is the only altar whose divine symbol disappears before the cutscene plays.
Lord Hades.
Your progress is impressive, Kratos. But your skills will not carry you to your ultimate goal. I offer you the souls of Hades itself. The souls of the dead, who stand ready to fight by your side. Take this weapon, Kratos. Take this power, and use it to defeat your enemies.
The kind Hades gave us the power to summon damned souls to stand by our side in battle, and then summon some zombies for us to test the power on. You don't actually have to use his power here at all to progress. Now that we have our prize, we jam the skull into the underwater door, and that finally drains the build-up water, allowing us to, at last, align the diamond beam of the egg-wielding statues. For some reason, during this cutscene, Kratos didn't have the skirt hanging from his belt. As we run through the same corridors one final time, we reach the lever where Athena warns us that once we ascend, we cannot get away without the box. What she doesn't realize is that we couldn't return the moment Kratos set foot on the temple grounds. A commentary from her on our progress thus far is a good idea, however just a few moments after we pull the lever, the narrator also comments on what awaits Kratos, and her commentary actually is meaningful. Well, once the elevator reaches the top, the hands of Zeus' statue guide us towards our next objective. Also, you can see in the distance how Athens continues to fall under Ares' siege. A neat detail is that basically the moment Kratos notices this strange-looking enemy, he immediately draws his blades. He usually doesn't have any significant reaction to new enemies, meaning he can tell this, let's call it fallen pharaoh, is dangerous. Although he is scripted to perform one of his combo attacks right at the start of the battle, and this attack doesn't even track Kratos, so I don't understand why it was included. Anyway, this is also the first enemy that can recover while being hit mid-air, and also the first one that can be grabbed at any time, while also being able to counter grabs outright. Once the pharaoh is defeated, two more take his place. However, you can just knock them out of the battle arena, killing them instantly. Once the barrier is lifted, we press on.
Kratos had been in service to the gods long enough to know the Harpy had been sent as a warning, a reminder from his former master of the decision that had cost Kratos everything. Had it been that long since he'd almost met his end at the hands of the barbarians? That long since he'd traded everything to save himself?
Ares!
The sky split apart, and the god of war stepped through. Descending from Olympus, he saw the makings of a god in a mere mortal. Ares would save Kratos. He would turn him into the perfect warrior, his servant on Earth. Only a simple pledge of loyalty was required.
My life is yours, Ares. From this day, I shall carry forth your will.
And his fate was sealed. As promised, Ares rescued his new disciple, bringing forth the power of a god, destroying those who would slaughter Kratos and his men. As for Kratos, no mere sword and shield would befit the newest servant of the god of war. The blades of chaos, forged in the foulest depths of Hades. Once attached, the chains remained so, chained and seared to the flesh, a part of the bearer's body, a permanent reminder of Kratos' pledge. In return, ultimate power. The rage of Ares exploded from within. But soon, he would learn the true cost of such power. A cost too high even for Kratos to pay.
Wretched beast! I know who it is you serve!
Return to your master! Tell the god of war I am his no longer. Tell him he is not safe while I walk the earth. I will find Pandora's box. And I will use it to see him tremble and fall before me.
It would appear Ares has a way of tracking Kratos, as he could tell he was making progress inside the temple. But there were two other interesting hooks in this cutscene. First, Ares did not save Kratos just because he felt like it. He saved him because he recognized his talent and his potential to be the greatest warrior to have ever lived. And second, Kratos. It seems during this journey, his heart has somewhat darkened. While his original goal was to kill Ares so that the gods would relieve him of his nightmares that are edging him ever closer to madness, now it seems he harbors ambition as well. He no longer wants to just kill Ares, now he wants to humiliate him. That is a dangerous shift. Well, onwards to Cliffs of Madness. We find a book pedestal which details Paphos' lamenting. As he wishes a would-be challenger good luck, now he pins his message as once loyal subject of the gods. It seems even he no longer wishes to continue constructing this death game. The cliffs are a platforming challenge where the gaps are long and the archers like shooting at you mid-jump. This is the type of challenge that is punishing but still fair. As you ascend an elevator, you can take an optional path to the right, which leads to a cave full of powerful enemies. There are the slow armored zombies and the nimble fallen pharaohs. All of their attacks can be blocked, but if one of them hits you, you are likely to be hit by the others as well. Finding an opening is difficult. I almost got killed here in slow motion. But at least the hitboxes are very tight, so you can't really get hit by an attack that doesn't physically connect with Kratos. Also, for some reason, you cannot knock the enemies from the higher platform onto the lower platform due to an invisible wall. They wouldn't even have to die to fall damage, but it would be nice if you could reposition them. You would be effectively trading an easier access to the health chest for a more difficult battle once you get back down to the lower arena. That being said, there is quite a maddening amount of enemies here. Once the cave is conquered, I finally found something positive about Artemis' blade. It can deflect explosive arrows without taking damage. After fighting our way through more fallen pharaohs, we summoned the souls of the dead to get rid of the archer fire and then cross over the broken bridge, where I fell into the void. Well, nothing good ever happens on the first try. And what the hell? Why is this checkpoint so far back? Man, these Cliffs of Madness are... Oh, moving on. The bridge is crossed, we find more pharaohs, and look, they can deflect fully charged Zeus's lightning. And they can do it during the recovery animation and while attacking themselves. These guys are basically mini-bosses and are everywhere. I'm starting to think that devs didn't really intend for you to fight them all, but rather just to walk by. Further on we find some minotaurs that are immune to ring-outs, some pharaohs that are not immune to ring-outs, and a rope that triggers a glorious music to play, ensuring us we are making good progress. Nothing all that important happens for a while, until we find an emerald necklace in a small shrine that gets swiftly barred by iron bars. As a soft and soothing music plays, we are presented with the next challenge: rebuild the soul of Patos Verdes. I have played this game enough times to know the puzzle from memory, but when I played it for the first time, I had no idea what I was supposed to do, until I finally struggled my way into the solution. Though at the time I wasn't even old enough to satisfy the PEGI rating of 18+, so maybe that was just an artifact of my age. Anyway, once the blocks are in position, the iron bars lower once more, allowing us to snag the prize we came for: Hera's necklace. Now we can peacefully backtrack as a previously inaccessible ladder lowers down. And it leads us to a massive wall that we must climb to further our quest. Also, the enemies here can damage you even if you are currently grabbing a different enemy. Usually you are damage immune in such circumstances. Also, in a nice touch, the camera usually gives you an overhead view of Kratos' current position, but if you start climbing down, the camera starts shifting to showcase Kratos from below instead, subtly telling you that going downwards is not the correct path. As we reach the end of the wall, we find a lever. Pulling it makes a new path accessible that leads towards a cave similar to the one we just rescued the necklace from. Now just to get away from these walls. On my first playthrough, I actually got stuck here because I had no idea how to return to the normal path, and in this case it isn't even very obvious. You are supposed to climb down one of these walls so you can drop down to where you fought the ring-out prone pharaohs from before, but even here, you can see that I got fed up looking for it, so I used a jumping enemy to force Kratos to fall down, skipping the whole problem of searching for the correct path. Ironically, I was right next to the correct wall, but oh well. Also, if you don't quite remember which path you already took and you slide down the rope again, you will again have to make your way back using these walls. But now the second form of madness begins. How do we even get there? We find the exit to the Minotaur-laden cave, but the dropped block with rope is nowhere to be seen. But the Minotaur emblem was both on the exit and on the entrance, so we actually have to backtrack more than we thought we needed to. Well, once we finally reach the cave, a room full of holes in the floor and a single lever appears. Since there isn't much else to do, we pull the lever and immediately get trapped inside. Now, with an ominous music in the background and the gradually quickening sound of some mechanism, we must push a block all the way to the other end of the room before the floor spikes impale us. This actually isn't as difficult as it sounds, but it is an amazing set piece. Once we climb up, we find a twin necklace to the first one we found. With both necklaces in hand, there is but one section left for us to conquer. As we make our way through the hollow caverns back once more, the feeling of loneliness dawns on us. All the enemies lie slain, all the warriors and the heroes have fallen, and only Kratos himself still continues his journey. And the journey is coming to an end as we set the necklaces in their designated slots, triggering 4 blocks to become active, finally giving us enough footing to let us pass the deadly void below. At the top of the cliffs, Kratos looks at his plates, covered in blood.
The path before Kratos was clear, but still, the memories came rushing back, as familiar and permanent as the blades chained to his wrists. Memories of what he'd done in the name of Ares. Memories of how he'd become a servant to the god of war. A beast, his humanity robbed and replaced only with the will to murder. No one was safe. Entire armies fell before Kratos and the soldiers who followed him on his unending path of conquest, all in the name of his master. Those who offered resistance of any kind were dealt with quickly.
They've built this temple to offer prayers to Athena! This entire village stands as an affront to Lord Ares! Burn this village! Burn it to the ground!
Emboldened by the god of war, Kratos' army was ruthless, feared throughout the world for their brutality. All that mattered was conquest in the name of Kratos, their great leader, who had become near invincible. He feared nothing. But there was something about this temple, something forbidden. All his instincts told him he should never cross its threshold. Never step inside.
Beware, Kratos. The dangers in the temple are greater than you know.
But the village oracle's warning fell on deaf ears. His ambition would not be denied. All who opposed him would die. In that instant, the glory he had reveled in turned to horror. The image of his two final victims would stay with him for all his days. With that act, Kratos knew he could no longer serve his master. He had but one calling now, the death of Ares. He would murder the god of war.
Ares, you will die for what you did that night.
What I find interesting is this framing here, the soldier on the right there. I always found his sudden raise of his arm not as a cheer for conquest, but as an instinct to stop Kratos from tossing the torch that would mark their raid on Athena's village. But maybe that's just me reading too deep into the scene. What is more interesting though, is the oracle that came to warn Kratos against attacking the temple. She stood before him completely fearless, and even though her warnings fell on deaf ears, Kratos simply pushed her aside rather than kill her. Kratos has no trouble murdering innocents left and right everywhere he goes, but when someone who isn't even a warrior stands in his path, he seems to have an innate respect for their courage, thus letting them go unscathed. But what finally stopped him were his own hands that murdered two people in the temple. As of right now, we don't know their significance, but since seeing them dead literally brought Kratos to his knees, we can assume they were due to him. Moving on, apparently there isn't a death plane where one would be appropriate, letting you swing on the ropes and then drop down one level to just before the four retracting blocks activated via twin necklaces. Luckily, that is easily remedied by reloading a checkpoint. As we swing over the chasm and pull a lever of the elevator before us, the Cliffs of Madness are conquered. The elevator takes us up to an area called the Architect's Tomb. This is both haunting and relieving. The man whose mind you were challenged by already found his peace. But that also means the temple itself is nearing its end. This section contains some fights, but the real goal is to solve the puzzle before us. The tomb is protected by 3 timed gates, but there is only one Kratos, so we must find a way to activate all related buttons at the same time. We can activate 2 of them already, though that would not be helpful at this moment, so we go on exploring. As a side note, if you time your attack just right, you can kill a Cerber pup just as he starts maturing into a Cerberus hound, meaning the pup transforms while already being dead. Defeat all enemies and climb a ladder leading to a crane. We can use its loaded bolt to smash through a crack in the floor, but before progressing, we also turn the crane further to apply pressure to one of the 3 buttons. Then we move a statue onto the button that was hidden underneath the cracked floor, and finally, we backtrack to the start where the final button awaits. All buttons are pressed and now we need to rush inside the tomb, and while doing that, let me talk about this area in general. I am a big fan of the Architect's final resting place, leaning more into mechanical puzzles rather than gates conditioned by defeating enemies. That being said, I can also understand why there still are so many enemies everywhere. From a gameplay point, having a big playable area with no enemies and just puzzles could turn fans of the beat-em-up genre away. But at the same time, I don't really feel like having this many enemies was necessary. On the one hand, all of them are optional, on the other hand, most of them will get in your way during puzzle solving. But oh well. Now inside the tomb, we come across a gruesome scene. The Architect's wife stabbed through her heart, and the Architect himself hunched over backwards on his workbench. A note by his body reveals the details. Kratos' wife tried to stop him, but he was too proud of being selected by the gods, so he stopped her instead. What lies on the workbench now is simply a madman, entirely lost in his quest for the gods, for constructing the perfect death machine. The walls are adorned with Kratos' sketches of the death traps, but the path ahead is, once again, blocked by a skull-shaped keyhole. So we sever the head of his final family member in a sequence that has completely misaligned audio, and then we finally walk through the road that leads us to the final challenge of Pandora's temple. This is it, the very last obstacle to overcome. Conveyor belts with crusher wheels on all ends. At first sight it is deceptively easy, a bunch of dive-bombing harpies and a bunch of explosive-shot archers. However, it is this challenge where I was stuck for about a year on my first God difficulty playthrough. It is absolutely brutal. The harpies' relentless assault, the combination of quick attacks from some and dive bombs from others, and the archers standing on platforms unaffected by the conveyor belts, seemingly safe, but stay on them for a second too long and you will be instantly killed by a flamethrower mounted on the walls. So you must deal with the harpies, archers, shifting attack patterns, unstable floor, instant death traps, and overwhelming amount of enemies. As far as final challenges go, this is easily at the very top of level design. It is brutal, unforgiving, and is the perfect conclusion to a temple built to kill you. But once all the enemies are finally dead, the last barrier separating you from Pandora's box is lifted. Also, interestingly, interacting with the mural on the floor completely disables all in-game audio for some reason. We kick open the door and we see statues of the three gods overseeing the construction of this temple, as they all gaze upon a casket in the middle. Although there is an interesting design choice, where the skies visible from this balcony are twisted and chaotic, not clear and calm as you would expect them to be at the end of your journey.
Kratos, your quest is at an end. You are the first mortal to ever reach Pandora's box. There is still time to save Athens. You must bring the box back to my city and use it to kill Ares. Return to Athens, Kratos. Return and save my city.
The box looks very sinister considering it was supposed to be a tempting gift for Pandora's birthday. As the glass platform descends, we are brought to the very beginning of the temple. Behind the descended platform, there is a rather strange-looking carving of Athena. Her face has no eyes and her attire appears bridal. If you are familiar with the story of God of War 3, her placement specifically here, at the very end, will make sense, but otherwise, she seems very out of place in a temple that didn't mention her once. Also, apparently the temple is now sealed for 2,500 years as a result of being conquered, says the oval door leading to the rings of Pandora. But now, let's go save Athens. So, with the heavy box now in our possession, seriously, how does Athena expect us to carry this all the way to Athens? We return towards Ares' point of view, who seems to be reaching the conclusion of his siege of the great city. He seems both impressed and not impressed with Kratos' progress at the same time. Great voice acting and cinematography on display here.
So, little Spartan, you've recovered Zeus's precious box.
Now, while we have a bit of time, I would like to briefly return to the Cliffs of Madness. The game section itself is quite long and feels good to play through, but there isn't all that much to comment on, which is why it fell short in this video. So gameplay-wise, perfectly serviceable, but commentary-wise, it felt a bit childish.
As the life began to leave Kratos, his thoughts returned to that fateful night. Even in death, the memories, the visions would not fade. For how could he forget spilling the blood of his own family? A cruel trick orchestrated by the god of war.
My wife, my child, how? They were left in Sparta.
You are becoming all I'd hoped you'd be, Kratos. Now, with your wife and child dead, nothing will hold you back. You'll become even stronger. You will become death itself.
But as the flames consumed the temple, Kratos realized his true enemy was the god who once saved his life. The same god who had now taken everything from him.
Ares!
From this night forward, the mark of your terrible deed will be visible to all. The ashes of your wife and child will remain fastened to your skin, never to be removed.
And with that curse, all would know him for the beast he had become. His skin white with the ash of his dead family. The ghost of Sparta had been born. In the end, in death, he had failed. As the minions of Ares claimed Pandora's box, Kratos' life faded, and his cursed soul was cast into the fires of Hades. And Kratos fell into the underworld, the river Styx beckoning below, the currents strong enough to carry even the strongest mortal to his eternal resting place. But Kratos had no intention of resting yet. He intended to live, to return to Earth and complete his quest.
Let go, fool! You won't drag me down to that cursed river!
There is a task left for me above. I will see it completed.
You again?
Having just barely escaped damnation, now we find ourselves atop fleshy pillars, surrounded by the wailing of the dead every step of the way. Even the enemies are on fire now. Gameplay-wise they are much the same, but they have vastly larger health pools, so we bring them peace and linger on. Now we have spinning flesh balls ahead of us, serving both as traps and platforms. There are multiple paths to take and a handful of enemies, but the platforming itself is the main challenge. The balls spin at various speeds, in various directions, and both of these change still as time goes on. Also there are some points at which the checkpoint you respawn at is directly next to an enemy that will attack you right away. Thankfully, you can also use Kratos' unique abilities to see out further ahead of you, allowing you to decide whether you are willing to take an extra risk for an extra reward. Some harpies also attack while off-screen, making you rely on audio cues so you can calculate when their strike will impact you. Having traversed the fleshy poles, we now come across the second instance where a save point is in direct line of fire of archers. Actually trying to platform over to them without dispatching them using ranged magic is very difficult. After crossing over to the other side, with the archer specified, a horde of monsters emerges, including my favorite variation of the Minotaur, the flaming one. They are the same as their mortal plane counterparts, but half of their bodies are made out of living fire, while the rest of their usually blue bodies is now scorched. Overall, they look as though their souls were passing on, but stopped midway through, destabilizing their bodies. After they are sent to eternal slumber, the most grievous part of hell presents itself. Thick, ladder-like spiked pillars that you have to climb, but getting hit a single time will send you to the very bottom. As we surpass the ladder pillars, we once again jump over flush platforms, and now stand face to face with the ruthless assault of flaming fallen pharaohs. In order to walk onwards, they need to fall, and so we get to exercising, slaying one pharaoh after another, each of their deaths raising a new pillar creating a staircase for us, until, at last, we can reach and start the ascent. Wanting to avoid further bloodshed, we make a risky jump for the closest platform, and actually manage to reach it. As we go claim our treasures, however, Lord Hades quickly reminds us who is in charge, and that skipping ahead will be severely punished. So we conquer the challenge a second time, and at the very top of the stairway, mercilessly rip a flaming archer in half, ridding ourselves of the very last soul barring our way. The only thing left for us to do is to climb the platforms before us, while noticing a strange, earth-like rock floating overhead. Our long climb allows us time to reflect. Hell, while being very samey, did offer great challenge in the strength of its warriors, and although the spiked pillars were a source of many torments for the souls past, they also showcased the game's incredible accurate hitbox mapping. You will not get hit unless the blades directly touch Kratos' body, even if you are but a few pixels away from them. But leaving the wailing of the damned and the hell itself behind, we remember what our purpose is. Athens needs saving, and we will lend a helping hand.
Ah, Kratos. And not a moment too soon. I only finished digging just a moment ago.
Who are you?
Now that is an interesting question. But for now, you must hurry. Athens needs you.
But how did you know I would...
Athena isn't the only god keeping watch on you, Spartan. Complete your task, Kratos, and the gods will forgive your sins.
Athena isn't the only god keeping watch on you. Is the Gravedigger himself a god, or a servant to the gods? Well, he did remind us of the promised reward, and he was correct. We must hurry. So we are back at the Oracle's temple, and it has seen better days. But the stairs are still intact, so we can proceed unimpeded. Inside the temple there is a homecoming party waiting for us. Some of the early game enemies are there. Cyclops with a spinning chain ball, Minotaur, back with both their war axes and hammers, even archers and gorgons of old. And I guess the Blades of Chaos can also deflect explosive arrows. Op. I really thought I found something to praise the Blade of Artemis for back at the Cliffs of Madness. Anyway, we trek the final log of the journey until we find the Oracle, lying on the floor on her last breaths. Behind the Oracle, the final hallway awaits. Once we cross over, the time has come.
Kratos had traversed the desert of lost souls, bested the deadly traps of Pandora's temple, and escaped Hades itself. There was but one task left.
Zeus! Do you see now what your son can do? You cast your favor on Athena, but her city lies in ruins before me. And now, even Pandora's box is mine. Would you have me use it against Olympus itself?
Kratos, returned even from the underworld.
Is this the best you can do, father? You send a broken mortal to defeat me, the god of war?
After thousands of years, Pandora's box was finally open. The power of the gods unleashed.
You are still just a mortal. Every bit as weak as the day you begged me to save your life.
I am not the same man you found that day. The monster you've created has returned to kill you.
You have no idea what a true monster is, Kratos. Your final lesson is at hand. Prepare to join your family, Spartan.
I will return to this cutscene later, because there is something I want to show you, but for now let's begin our destined match against the god of war. As Kratos grew in size, his blades can now have a real effect on Ares. Speaking of, Ares has many attacks, uses multiple weapons, and even has unblockable attacks that span the entire battle arena. Even during the battle itself, his voice acting is still in a class of its own. He reacts to being hit, but also taunts Kratos and constantly tries to get under his skin with his remarks. It is possible he thought angering Kratos would make him sloppier, but instead, Kratos doesn't seem to have any reaction whatsoever. The battle itself is overall satisfying. It is a shame you cannot use Medusa's head to at least temporarily paralyze the god, or slow down his movements to make avoiding his stronger attacks easier, and I personally would have preferred more of a top-down view of the battle, rather than down-top, but other than these two complaints, fighting Ares here feels satisfying. The challenge is just right, the battle doesn't feel cheap, the music is perfect for the spectacle, and Ares speaks often, demanding attention from both Kratos and the player. However, in contrast, Kratos doesn't speak at all besides his usual battlegrounds, which feels kinda odd. He spent the whole game chasing after means to kill his arch-nemesis, and when the battle finally starts, he doesn't speak at all. Also, if you don't start blocking in advance before some of Ares' attacks, then he can hit you through your guard, as you can see here. but we do overpower him eventually, causing him to lose his cool.
Flesh that burns, bones that break. But to break a man's spirit is to truly destroy him. Do you recognize this place, Spartan? The location of your greatest failure? Perhaps there is a chance you can undo the deeds of the past.
The nightmares that had haunted Kratos for the past 10 years had now taken form and substance. His past stood before him.
Kratos! What's happening? Where are we?
By the gods, can this be real?
There is nothing you can put in my way to stop me! I will save my family!
And so it begins. Kratos now stands against the very source of his growing madness, the memory of when he killed his own family. As monstrous versions of himself emerge from the floor, the walls, as his family screams out in fear as the temple they stand in begins to crumble and the floor shatters, Kratos must now vigilantly protect the ones he loves, from himself. This is an absolutely haunting scene, forcing us to face that which killed the last remainder of our humanity. Gameplay-wise, this is the only section in the entire game where someone has a health bar and isn't hostile. You will be forced to use all of your magic, all of your rage of the gods, summon the souls of the dead, the primordial and dominant lightning. However, as the desperate struggle continues, the monstrous versions of Kratos gain these abilities as well, summoning sinister lightning and using eroded blades of Artemis, all in order to kill his family once more. As the family's health starts vanishing, Kratos can transfer his own life force into them, draining his own health in the process. However, this also rapidly restores his Rage of the Gods ability, slowly building up to a second wind near the end of the survival. On higher difficulties, it is not enough to avoid taking damage. You must strategize on when to use your magic, when to start saving it up, when to unleash your rage so that you will have enough time to unleash it again, and doing all of this while making sure the monsters stay far away from your loved ones. This is, unfortunately, also the most difficult part of the Ares boss fight, and he isn't even there. But thematically, it is amazing. And if they, or you, lose all of your health, there is a unique cutscene where Kratos gets brutally slaughtered by his own monstrosity. But I actually think that scene is too graphic for YouTube, so you'll have to make do without it. But eventually, we do manage to weather the storm.
Kratos had done the impossible. He had saved his family.
Kratos, please take us home!
Do you see, God of War? You took them once, but you'll never have them again!
You cannot save them, Kratos. You gave them up in your quest for ultimate power. There is a price to pay for everything you gain.
Not that price. I didn't want them to die.
No price is too high for what I offered. And you rejected me. A god! Now, you will have no power, no magic. All that is left for you is death!
Oh, not again.
You should have joined me, Kratos. You should have been stronger.
By the gods.
The battle was not over. The gods, it seemed, had a final gift for Kratos.
I still have allies in Olympus, Ares. Now, you would see how strong I am.
Although his family was just an illusion created by Ares, the god still made sure to speak exactly the words that would hurt the most. You killed them because you were power-hungry. This likely did more to Kratos because he thought his family heard that, rather than coming to terms with it being the truth. But it was the act of ripping Kratos' blades off of his arms and killing his family with them again that finally broke him. Just not it the way Ares expected. He thought Kratos would lose all will to live. Instead, he lost the very last humanity that was still within him. All he cares about now is the death of the god of war. So, on to the battle. Kratos now wields the Blade of the Gods, a wholly unique weapon that seems like a direct upgrade to the Blade of Artemis. It is cool and has awesome animations and sound effects, but this fight with Ares is the only point in the entire game where you get to use it. You can't even use it in bonus play for some reason. Also, Ares can do this, dealing about 70% of your health in just 2 attacks. And speaking of health, the two of you now share a health bar in a tug-of-war match. The damage you deal to him converts his health to yours, and vice versa. This might be a unique property of Kratos' blade, as it solely siphons Ares' divinity and transfers it over to Kratos, which is further hinted upon by the blade's icon in the middle of the 2 health bars. But anyway, as we finally begin applying real pressure on Ares, we engage in a final clash of swords that will determine the winner of this spectacle. And yes, my game just crashed, meaning I need to do all 3 phases of this battle again. But to be honest, I don't think I have ever seen the game straight up crash in all my years playing it, so even though it happened basically right at the end, forcing me to replay the entire final battle, it is not as big of a deal as it seems. So we reenact the exact same scene, a final clash of swords, and this time Kratos is the winner, finally bringing the mighty god to his knees.
Remember, Kratos, it was I who saved you in your time of greatest need.
I haven't forgotten, Ares. I remember how you saved me.
That night, I was trying to make you a great warrior.
You succeeded.
Kratos had done the impossible. A mortal defeating a god. Ares was no more. The city had been saved and would thrive again. The same could not be said for Kratos, for as he sought to rebuild his soul with the help of the gods, the truth was revealed to him.
Athena, rid me of the memories that haunt me still.
You have done well, Kratos. Though we mourn the death of our brother, the gods are indebted to you. We promised your sins would be forgiven, and so they are. But we never promised to take away your nightmares. No man, no god could ever forget the terrible deeds you have done.
In the end, knowing the visions of his past would never leave him, Kratos made his way to the bluffs overlooking the Aegean Sea.
The gods of Olympus have abandoned me. Now there is no hope.
And Kratos cast himself from the highest mountain in all of Greece. After 10 years of suffering, 10 years of endless nightmares, it would finally come to an end. Death would be his escape from madness. The fate of Kratos was not as it seemed. The gods had other plans. Borne aloft like a feather, Kratos found himself risen from the sea and placed on solid earth.
You will not die this day, Kratos. The gods cannot allow one who has performed such service to perish by his own hand. Ares' tactics were brutal. His path of destruction had to be stopped. But now there is an empty throne in Olympus, and a new god of war is needed. Take these stairs, Kratos. They lead to your ultimate reward.
The narrator said Athens has been saved, but I mean, half of the city was blasted to oblivion, most of the people are dead, and monsters roam every street. How safe is the city really? But more importantly, the cruelty of gods is on show again. Kratos fought to save his mind from collapse due to the nightmares, but the gods would not take these away. When he decided to end it all, the gods would not allow that either. Instead, he would now live forever as a new god of war. Which is honestly extremely short-sighted on the part of the gods. They have just elevated a mortal capable of killing the divine into divinity. They refused to grant him his one request, they denied him an end to his suffering on his own terms, and now they ascend him to godhood. Did they not see how Kratos was becoming gradually more ruthless in his battle against Ares? How he went from wanting to save Athens to wanting to kill the war god? Well, one final thing to note. The way Kratos spoke his first time, while on the cliff of Olympus, was different from how he spoke it in the beginning. In the beginning, he sounded like he was about to break into tears, realizing he will never find salvation.
The gods of Olympus have abandoned me.
But at the end, he sounded more like he was just sighing. Something like, "Oh dread, the gods didn't save me, that freaking sucks," before again reverting to his mournful tone in the very next second, because that part of the intro was reused unaltered.
The gods of Olympus have abandoned me.
The framing was better at the end, but the voice acting was far better at the beginning. Well, anyway, Kratos is a god now, so let's go claim the throne.
And from that point forward, throughout the rest of time, whenever men rode forth to battle for good cause or for evil, they did so under the watchful eye of the man who had defeated a god. They were driven forward by Kratos, the mortal who had become the new god of war.
And that's the end. But before closing the video, let us return to the cutscene with Ares. I will now play you side by side the cutscene from the PS2 version and the remastered PS3 version, and highlight some oddities that caught my attention.
There was but one task left.
Zeus! Do you see now what your son can do? You cast your favor on Athena. Kratos returned even from the underworld.
Alright, now we truly are at the end. God of War is one of the few games I treasure. I have played it way too many times and still love it. I would score it at a 5 out of 10. Go play it if you haven't already. It is well worth your time. But then why 5? Well, as a gamer, this game is an amazing experience, full of glorious moments, beautiful scenes, great enemy design, and one of the best stories to have ever been written. But, as a game critic, it is impossible to overlook the many issues it has, ranging from thematic mismatching, to the insane constant overuse of enemies, to the unfinished Blade of Artemis. It is a great game, and I will always love it, but it is better enjoyed when you go into it with the mindset of wanting to have fun. And speaking of fun, I came up with something that I think you might find interesting. If, by the end of this year, 2026, we manage to reach a total of 10,000 subscribers, then I will make a video where I try my best to narrate the entirety of God of War from start to finish, including redubbing the cutscenes and describing movement in the game world, all from memory alone. I will have to train up for it, but I believe it will be a great time. Alright, thank you for watching and listening to me complain about my favorite game for so long. I am glad I could entertain you for a bit, and if this video does well, I can do another retrospective sometime. Currently I am deciding between either Asura's Wrath, which I have also replayed as many times as God of War, or Spyro 3 Year of the Dragon, which is actually the very first video game I have ever played. feel free to let me know which one you would prefer in the comments. With that being said, thank you again and may you have a peaceful day.